In the beginning of the story, we see a man completely covered in blood, surrounded by dying men. He fiercely shouted that he doesn't care what people call him and that he will make sure that he is the one to kill his father. School begins. A fat bully is shouting at a student to tell him the lunch menu and calls him annoying. He is pissed and asks his companion to bring the loser to the store later. His intentions were to snatch all the money from him. But since he was from a poor family, his companion whether he would have any money on him. The fat bully replies that the poor families invest and spoil their children the most, and since his family income is up or low, he can rip him off of that money as well, and they all start laughing loudly. Suddenly a man walks up to them. The fat bully looks back, but to his surprise, he gets stabbed on his eye with a pen and falls onto the floor covered with blood. After this commotion, the man is taken to the staff office where the teacher asks him what he did all that even after always studying for the past 3 years. And since he was not even the victim of the bully, the teacher asks for the reason behind his actions. After being white for a willer, the man replies that they were simply being too loud. This man was none other than the main character of the story, Kong Pildu. Rumors spread fast. The students started to learn about the commotion Pildu created. He was soon given a nickname, Psychopath Kong Pildu. Pildu, however, was determined to not care what the others call him, and he will do whatever it requires for him to survive. Years pass by. He has successfully become a prosecutor. A fellow staff asks him to come attend the meeting. The meeting starts with Pildu's presentation on SONHWA Group's rapid growth. They run a loan lending business and accumulated 500 billion won in revenue. To this news, the chairman of his company replies that he doesn't see a problem here. Pildu continues. He adds that SONHWA company is no ordinary company. They have absorbed the nation's gangs to expand their influence and power. As they grow, the number of crimes increase with them. They regularly physically assault or blackmail those who come in the way of their business. They don't hesitate to murder either. The reason they can stay safe even after committing these crimes is because the presidential candidate Kong Ildo is helping them out. He's technically the owner of the SONHWA group. After hearing this, the chairman declared that the meeting was over. He asked Pildu to stay since he has something to talk about. Due to the amount of hard work put in by Pildu, the chairman thought he was overworking himself for the promotions, but to his surprise he denied. Chairman was surprised. He asked him whether it was an obsession. Pildu replies that it was not an obsession either. Suddenly he gets a flashback of his mom asking him to blind eye on these. She begged him to give up on SONHWA Group's investigation and asked him to listen to her just once. He comes back to the present. The chairman tells him that he knows that Pildu is doing his best, but this company is not where he works and he could do nothing about this since Lang Idlo is a presidential candidate. If things go south, the entire public prosecutor body will be after them, which will affect the upcoming election and put their lives at stake. The chairman receives a phone call from Mr. Kong. He starts sweet talking with him. Mr. Kong asked him to relay something to Pildu something. Right before he was about to leave the room, the chairman tells him that his mother is dead. Kong Pildu looked back at the chairman with fierce eyes. The ceremony hall was beautifully decorated with white flowers. In farthest end lied the picture of Pildu's mom. The other family members had not allowed visitors into the ceremony, which kept the ceremony completely empty until few men in black suits came over and started removing all the decorations since there weren't any visitors. One of them asks whether it was really alright to remove it right away since it hasn't even been 3 days. The man replies that the higher-ups don't care it. A man brings Pildu's mother's framed picture. The man ordered him to just throw it away and join others to remove the decorations. Once they were done and leaving, a man in black suit came in. He was none other than our Pildu. These men were not aware that he was her son and screamed at him since visitors we not allowed. Pildu shows a cold shoulder and tells them that he wanted to know how his mother died, but the higher-ups had already taken care of the situation. Therefore, he went to the hospital to check on the actual reports since they never lie. He spotted multiple stab marks on her mother's body, which means she was brutally unalived by a gang. He asks those men was all that even necessary? They made it sure that she couldn't even make a single sound while being brutally stabbed without any break. However, Pildu adds that she had swallowed something before she died. That way he realized who was really after her life. One of the man in black suit approached Pildu while warning him not to get in the way of their business. The man gets his finger broken by Pildu, and a kick straight to his chin. Seeing the man fall unconscious, another man rushed at him with a knife in hand, but Putin knocks him out right away and makes it clear that he is not going to do this with the law anymore. From now on, he is doing it his way, and anyone who gets in his way will be killed. Soon after, the Pildu's brothers get to know that he beat up everybody at the funeral. The second son, Kong Mu, says that it won't be good for the presidential election if things get out of hand. The third son agrees with what his brother had said and asks their father for a solution. Kong Ildo, their father, replies that it's sister different for his own child and ordered them to kill him. During the night time, 3 people were walking down a shady alley when they spot a person walk past them. They quickly remember that it was the psychopath, Kong Pildu, who stabbed a bully on their eye. Watching him go, a man stood still thinking of the past. During their school days, this man was bullied by the fat bully. They would frequently torture him if he didn't bring them the money they asked for. Even when the teacher spotted them, the fat bully made an excuse and got out of trouble and threatened him to bring him cash and called his blind mother a bitch. The bullied kid was in deep sorrow and was regretting his life. Then appeared Pildu, who asked him to move since he was throwing the trash out. The bullied kid lied down, almost taking his life when Pildu asked him to not do it and that he will take care of the bullies. Fast forward to the moment, Pildu stabbed the fat bully in the eye to avenge the poor bullied kid. The kid watched Pildu stab the bully, but he did not step up to clarify things to people because at that moment, he was very scared of him. The story is now back to the present. Pildu walks past a woman who had been waiting for his daughter to come back home. He proceeds to walk up the stairs and open the door to his house. He figures out something was off about the place and walks in the house. Suddenly a man in black t-shirt charged at him with a knife from the darkness. However, Pildu manages to grab the knife before it pierced his stomach and beats the shit out of the man. He spots a man holding his knife at him. He asks him about the person who sent them to soakage him in a time like this. The guy replies that there's no point in learning who sent them since he will kill Pildu right away. Suddenly, we see the man fall on his knees covered up in blood with a blade stuck up his throat. Kong Pildu marches forward and finds a person sipping on alcohol on his dinner table. The man offered him alcohol and commented on him being a prosecutor even after effortlessly killing them. He thought that Pildu would be a bookworm, but now he has to ask for more money from the higher-ups. The doors to the washroom open. A young woman was lying down bruised all over. Pildu asked the man whether she was a part of the deal, to which the man replies that he brought her up from the floor down below. He wanted to frame Pildu for the possession of drugs and for exploiting young women from the neighboring houses. With a smirk on his face, the man says that this news will on the first page of the newspaper definitely. Pildu replies that nowadays that's not enough to make it to the front page. He would have to kill her parents as well to gain more attention. He points a terrifying glare at the man with the intent to kill. At the SUNHWA Group HQ, an assemblyman was sitting on the couch, looking the message sent by President Choi to take care of Pildu. He tells Kong Ildo that he himself will have to take care of the mess he has left. He sighs and regards Pildu as a bad son and questions his ignorance for not helping out his own father. The assemblyman tells Ildo that if this keeps getting wrong, he won't be able to avoid taking responsibility. Due to the continuous yapping of the assemblyman, Kong Ildo gets a bit furious and says that he'd have to dug up the entire Korea to bury his past. The assemblyman thought he was joking around and spoke up, but Ildo was dead serious about it. Ildo shouts that he doesn't spare anyone including his family if they try to get in his way. He also added that Pildu isn't someone who the assemblyman could take care of. If the assemblyman trued to barges in again, Ildo will have him buried as well. The assemblyman trembled in fear and picked up his phone to ask those people to back off. However, the person who he called was already lying dead, and the person who picked up the call was none other than Kong Pildu. Pildu asked the assemblyman Yo hand over the phone to Kong Ildo. He receives the phone and announces that it's him on the call now. Ildo further asked Pildu that after becoming a prosecutor, he could given him the prosecutor general position to him who others can't even dream of. He asked him whether he was doing all this because if the incident related to his mother. Pildu tells him that he doesn't understand what the death of her mother meant to him. He was only able to suppress himself till now was because of his mom, but now, even she has been taken away from him. The man wakes up, he has injuries all over his body and Pildu had detained with ropes. He suddenly smells gas flooding the entire room and the entire room catches fire and the man burns to death. Pildu watched the explosion from the rooftop and told his father that he will kill everybody who was involved in his mother's death without any exceptions. Not even his family. Kong Ildo laughs menacingly, telling Pildu that he has finally started to act more like his child and warns him about the path he has chosen. Due to the huge explosion, the ambulance came right away and the young woman who was beaten up by the man was on the stretcher on her way to the ambulance. Her mom thought she was injured seriously, but the nurse told her that the reporter had perfectly performed first aid on her. The police officers approaches them and wanted to ask her questions since it was a murder case. They asked her whether there were someone else along with the 3 people who attacked her. She replied that initially there were just 3 people but later another person came in. The police officers asked her about his apprentice, to which she replies that he was a young man with black hair, wearing a black suit and red eyes. She recalls her memory of him beating up the men brutally, without any hesitation. As Pildu walks away from the scene, he says that he doesn't care whatever the world thinks about him. He is a bad son. At a bar guarded by several guards, a man sat at a meeting table with several other men. He laughs crazy and says the Kong Pikdu has finally done it. This man was none other than the 3rd son of Kong Ildo, Kong Taegu. He discusses with his men that after the commotion created by his brother Pikdu, they have received a great opportunity. Taegu says that he won't planning on doing Inga anything before election, but things has changed. He wants to take down Pildu first to compensate for his dad's bad impression on him. He wants to him who's been pulling off the weight for his dad's company to make it this far. A man spoke up and asked him to take any flashy move at such incentive and asked him to wait at least for the election to end, but Tengu says that he can't keep doing all the dirty work for his father whole life. There's only one for then to move to the headquarters by using Pildu. Pildu received a footage of his mother walking in a dark alley, entering somewhere mysterious. He concludes that this footage was not old. He received this footage from an unknown person. Following the footage, he finds himself in the same dark alley her mother was last spotted at. He looks at the CCTV and confirms it. Moments later, few gang members bring unconscious men to the place. They called them goods, and if they get damaged, they won't get a fair price for them. Kong Pildu watches those people from a dark place observing their moves. In the building, the gang members surrounded a man who was on his knees begging to be spared. One of the gang members tells him that no one forced him to come here and shows him a paper explaining him that if he failed to pay interest, they will pay with the principal with their organs. The man had marks all over his body. He says if all of those organs are taken at once, he'll basically die. Their conversation was interrupted by the lounge barks of the dog strapped behind them. One of the gang members approached it and started beating it until he couldn't bark anymore. The gang member walks back to the man and points his bat at him. He pleads for his life, but the gang member ignores him and almost swings the bat. A gang member asks for his whereabouts, to which Pildu tells them to pay no attention to him and keep doing whatever they were doing. The man asks Pikdu to get out of there and asks for his cooperation. The man with the baseball bat in his hands asks Pildu about what he want after. Pildu replies that he's only there to check the CCTV. Upon listening his reply, the gang members couldn't stop laughing. The man sarcastically tells Pildu that they gotta show him the CCTV, but it won't be free. He points at his eyes and asks Pildu to give him one of his eye. Suddenly, a man tackles Pikdu from behind with a hammer in his hand. Pikdu evades the attack, grabs his face and drops a jawbreaker. The man fell unconscious. Pildu then grabs the chain from the floor and wraps it around his hand. Seeing this, all the gang members charge at him all at once. The victim took cover and watched Pildu kick everyone's ass. One by one, everyone fell on the ground until only 2 people were unhurt. Pildu approaches them and says that he only needs one of those 2. He asks them to speak. The man who was hesitant to tell him the detail was instantly shot with the bat. Seeing this, the other person was terrified and showed him the way to the CCTV room. It was a shady place. A man was sitting by the table doing something with earpods on. On further close-up, we see the man was actually painting an eyeball with a brush. The man stood up and turned back to see Pildu enter the room. Pildu says that he is in a hurry and directly asks for the copy of the CCTV footage. The man looked at Pildu and told him that it would be very sad if he didn't recognize who he was. He was none other than the fat bully, who Pildu stabbed on the eye. The man lets out a maniac smile and tells him that he made him into a one-eyed handicapped. The scene shifts to a past event where two men are in the middle of a transaction. As the buyer inspects the contents of the van, he notices that the amount of goods far exceeds what was requested. Another man tells him to ignore it, explaining that there had been an incident at the site. He mentions the supplier, someone affiliated with the Gangnam Gang, noting that the supplier's methods are unusual. He explains how the supplier initially barged in demanding an eye, adding that his way of operating is very different from other suppliers. The buyer nods, acknowledging that he has heard rumors about this supplier and his bizarre obsession with eyeballs. Pointing toward the bodies in the van, the other man remarks that these individuals had tried to oppose the supplier's methods and paid the ultimate price. He explains that the supplier not only killed them but also gouged out their eyeballs without using anesthesia. The aftermath left a mess that required 3 days to clean up. The buyer glances at the lifeless bodies and shakes his head, describing the supplier as a lunatic. He questions how long this madness will continue. The other man reveals that the supplier plans to end this soon. He explains that the supplier is confident the man who took one of his eyes back in high school, Kong Pildu, will eventually come looking for him. As if on cue, the scene shifts to the supplier smirking as Kong Pildu enters the room. The supplier greets Pildu with a sinister tone, claiming that he has been waiting for this moment for a long time. Kong Pildu, dismissing his taunts, demands the CCTV footage he came to retrieve. The supplier retaliates with cutting remarks, calling Pildu a selfish brute who will stop at nothing to get what he wants, earning himself the nickname Kong Pildu, the psychopath. Ignoring the provocations, Pildu coldly orders him to shut up and stop pretending to know him. Infuriated, the man shouts, asking if Pildu truly doesn't recognize him after ruining his life by blinding one of his eyes back in high school. Pildu denies any memory of the event, which only fuels the supplier's rage. Armed with a sharp, sinister tool designed for extracting eyeballs, the man lunges at Pildu in a frenzy. Pildu skillfully dodges the attacks, though one swipe leaves a shallow cut on his cheek. The supplier mocks him, claiming the tool is so sharp that its cuts are imperceptible. Pildu, undeterred, shrugs off his jacket and rolls up his sleeves, a gesture that further enrages his opponent. The supplier charges again, managing to drive the tool into Pildu's shoulder. Pildu, now bleeding, headbutts the man to loosen his grip and throws him across the room. Smirking, he taunts the supplier, claiming he finally remembers who he is from their school days. Enraged but fatigued, the supplier rises and attacks again, but Pildu counters with a series of precise blows, leaving the man staggering. Dropping the tool, the supplier grows weaker, while Pildu seizes the opportunity to approach the monitor he came for. Scrolling through the data, Pildu mutters that he will deal with the man later, as the footage takes priority. His expression darkens as he watches a recording of his mother begging the supplier for something. Turning to the man, Pildu demands an explanation for why his mother was groveling before him. In response, the supplier cuts all the power in the room. Darkness envelopes them, and the man dons night vision goggles to gain the upper hand. Suddenly, a sharp tool flies through the air, striking Pildu's shoulder once again. Grimacing in pain, Pildu pulls out the weapon and braces himself for another attack. However, the supplier, savoring the moment, begins to divulge a secret about Pildu's mother. He claims she had come to him seeking goods and offered to pay any amount he desired. Producing a list, Pildu's mother had pleaded with the supplier to acquire the items for her. Although she offered a generous sum, the supplier had demanded something far more personal in return. The supplier grabs more tools and continues revealing the shocking details of Pildu's mother's request. He explains that she wanted a middle-aged woman with pale skin, long straight hair, and red eyes. Pildu, stunned, tries to process what he's hearing. Before he can react, the supplier throws a bunch of sharp tools at him, forcing Pildu to raise his arms to protect his face and chest. Laughing at Pildu's confusion, the supplier adds something even more disturbing. He says that Pildu's mother didn't just want someone who looked like that. She specifically asked for a dead woman. She wanted a corpse that could take her place instead. Hearing this, Pildu's frustration grows as he struggles to understand why his mother would make such a strange and desperate request. As the supplier keeps attacking Pildu, he mocks him, saying his confidence seems to have vanished after learning about his mother's request. With Pildu losing a lot of blood, the supplier taunts him to beg for mercy, suggesting it's not too late to save his life. When Pildu remains silent, the supplier escalates his provocation, claiming that Pildu's mother was very good at begging for mercy. He then reveals that he had changed his demand from money to Pildu's eyes because they looked so much like his mother's. Laughing maniacally, the supplier recounts how he told Pildu's mother he'd only find the body she wanted if she agreed to give up her son's eyes in return. Hearing this, Pildu's anger flares, but before he can act, the supplier lands another attack, worsening Pildu's injuries. Approaching Pildu, the supplier admits that Pildu's mother didn't agree to the deal and reveals that another man intervened. This man struck a deal with the supplier, offering Pildu's mother in exchange for the chance to meet Pildu. The supplier, eager for revenge, accepted the offer and had been waiting for this moment ever since. Picking up a pickaxe, the supplier closes in on Pildu, assuming he's too weak to resist. When Pildu lowers his hands and stands still, the supplier smirks, thinking Pildu has given up. He mocks Pildu for surrendering and promises to reunite him with his mother in hell. As the supplier rushes toward him, Pildu suddenly turns and readies himself. The supplier hesitates briefly, doubting Pildu's ability to counter given his weakened state. But Pildu outsmarts him, smashing the supplier's goggles and leaving him completely blind. Panicked, the supplier swings wildly, shouting for Pildu to show himself. He boasts that Pildu has no advantage in the situation. Calmly, Pildu asks if the supplier truly can't see him, which confuses the man. When the supplier insists the room is pitch dark, Pildu casually reveals that the lights are on. The supplier freezes in shock as Pildu adds that the blades of his tools are indeed sharp. Sharp enough that the supplier didn't even feel his eyes being cut. Horrified, the supplier touches his face and realizes that Pildu is telling the truth. Overwhelmed with regret, he collapses to the floor, crying uncontrollably. Desperate, he grabs Pildu's shirt and tries to stand, claiming he'll be able to see again if he takes Pildu's eyes and implants them. As he reaches for Pildu's face, brushing his cheek near his eyes, Pildu's anger boils over. He slaps the supplier hard across the face, sending him sprawling to the ground. The supplier cries out in pain, accusing Pildu of taking advantage of his blindness. As he lies defeated and broken, sitting near the supplier, Kong Pildu instructs him to listen carefully, though he is certain the man cannot hear properly after the powerful slap that likely ruptured his eardrum. As the supplier checks his ear and asks Pildu to speak louder, Pildu's anger flares. He grabs the supplier by his hair, pulling him close, and demands to know the identity of the person who came asking about his mother. The supplier mumbles incoherently, but Pildu's patience runs thin as he glares at him. Moments later, Kong Taegsu and his gang arrive at the scene. By this time, however, Pildu has already uncovered the truth from the CCTV footage and fled the area. Upon entering the building, Kong Taegsu heads straight to the supplier's room. He finds the man lying in a pool of blood, barely clinging to life. Observing the supplier's weak muttering, Taegsu leans closer, trying to decipher his words but fails to understand him. Without hesitation, Taegsu pulls out a knife, his expression cold. He mockingly comments that the supplier should have chosen better allies and, with a swift motion, slices his neck, ending his life. As Taegsu cleans his knife, a gang member informs him that Pildu might still be nearby, as he was fighting the supplier. The gang member offers to send people after Pildu, But Taegsu dismisses the idea, telling him to stay calm. Turning his attention to the CCTV camera, Taegsu studies it for a moment. He concludes that Pildu has likely already seen who was with his mother on that night. Smirking, Taegsu confidently remarks that Pildu will come to them on his own. After all, he has always been like that since childhood, predictable and determined to settle things his way. A few months ago, at the Manhwa Group headquarters, Kang Taegu walked into the building. Confronting the guards at the door, he told them to stop frowning, commenting that it always felt like he was walking into a funeral. One of the guards stopped him, stating that he could not enter the building. Taegu asked if he looked like a pushover because of a joke. The other guards explained that they had received orders allowing entry only to designated members. Even when Taegu introduced himself as the third son of the Manhwa Group, they denied him entry. Brandishing a knife, he asked if they had forgotten his personality and shouted for the person blocking him to come out. Suddenly, Kang Mu, the second son of the Manhwa Group, approached and claimed responsibility. He remarked that Taegu hadn't discarded his old habits and questioned his positivity while brandishing a knife when things didn't go his way. Mu told Taegu he should be ashamed and that he should dance with those knives at his job, not at the head office. Taegu asserted that he was the president on the board of members. Kang Mu retorted that Taegu was merely the president of a subcontractor and that not all presidents were the same. He added that Taegu's wild behavior was why the company was in a mess. Walking in, Mu instructed the guards to do their job properly, noting that the company's image could be tarnished if they couldn't control such individuals. Taegu provoked Kang Mu, calling him a bastard who got his position only because he was born a minute earlier. With an angry face, Kang Mu asked if Taegu had lost his fear and prepared to fight him. He invited Taegu to a brawl to determine who was on top. Taegu, eager for the challenge, replied that it was exactly what he wanted to hear. As they were about to clash, a loud voice commanded them to stop. It was Kang Cha-wook, the first in line of the Manhwa Group. He walked past them, followed by Kang Mu. Wook advised Taegu to stay unnoticed and perform his duties if he wanted to remain part of the group, rather than striving for their brothers' positions. Taegu felt anger but controlled himself and responded that he understood. Internally, he seethed, thinking they wanted him to do their dirty work for the rest of his life. Determined to prove his worth, he resolved that he could no longer stay in their shadow. In a bar, documents containing details about Manhwa's illegal businesses are given to Kang Taegu. While examining the documents, Taegu asks his associate if he is sure about this since his brother did a lot of dirty work. His associate confirms that he obtained the information from popular Chinese hackers, so he trusts it. His associate then checks with his boss, Taegu, to ensure that he will be safe, as the situation could get worse for him if the documents were to be leaked. After getting confirmation, Taegu instructs his associate and others to accompany him to the head office. He explains that the documents need to be delivered to Kang Pildu. When questioned about his decision, Taegu clarifies that other prosecutors may have aligned with the upcoming president. He believes Pildu will investigate the matter, as Pildu is known for not caring about his family and will take action. Taegu plans to capture Manhwa after Pildu initiates his actions. In the present day, Pildu sits on the side of the bed, consumed by thoughts of his recent fight with his former classmate and the hurtful comments he made about his mom. As he picks up his phone to make a call, he is deep in thought about the situation. Meanwhile, Kang Mu walks out of the building towards his car and suddenly assaults the driver who is asleep at the wheel. As onlookers witness the scene, an individual attempts to intervene, but Kang Mu strikes this person for trying to stop him. He asserts that the issue is related to the company and he is not his former high school friend now, and threatens Chung-sun, warning that if he doesn't work harder, there will be serious consequences for him and his underlings. As he receives a phone call and hears no voice on the other end, he responds rudely, demanding that the caller speak up and questioning their identity. He presumes that it's his younger brother, Kang Pildu, on the line. Pildu, while recollecting the person in the CCTV footage, realizes that it's none other than Kang Mu. Kang Mu guesses that Kang Pildu is blaming his mother's death on him. He says that even if he did, Pildu cannot manage to kill him, and asks him if he plans to take on the entirety of Manhwa alone. He ends the call by challenging Pildu to find him if he is confident. In the gym, the chains of the punching bag are moving vigorously. Kong-mu is punching the bag so hard that the chains are broken, and blood is seen on the bag. Considering it an easy workout, he orders to get rid of the person and walks towards Chung-sun asking about his assigned tasks. Chung-sun replied that they were searching everywhere for it. Kong-mu says that the brothers are trying to take up too much of the space he left for them. He expected Taigu's behavior but didn't expect Pildu to be involved too. While the guards are moving the bodies, he orders them to do it quickly since they cannot interfere with his father's election. He also asks Chung-sun to keep an eye on Taigu and his surroundings as he is concerned about his silence. Chung-sun thinks it would be risky if Taigu found out about the mole. Kong-mu advises him to keep his distance and observe, emphasizing that he must tell him everything. He is tired of hearing Chung-sun's apologies and asks him to look at his shoes, which have a drop of blood on them. He wanted to test his skill after a long time, provoking him to do it. He agrees to do it right away and proceeds to lick his shoes to clean them. Kong-mu looks down on him and asks him to do better next time. At dawn, Chung-sun emerges from the house, yawning because it's time for his shift. Kong Pildu arrives near the house in his car and notices that Chung-sun, the team leader, is always with Kong-mu. Pildu concludes that to see his brother, he must first deal with Chung-sun, knowing that it won't be easy. After a while, Pildu walks towards Chung-sun with a hammer. Chung-sun responds to a radio message, saying he hasn't seen anything and instructs everyone to go home. Upon seeing Chung-sun's unsurprised face, Pildu asks if this type of situation occurs to him frequently. Chung-sun replies that he's quite surprised since Pildu is the first person to come there alone. Chung-sun then stands up and asks Pildu to go home for the day, mentioning that tomorrow is payday and he wants to avoid any trouble. He then clenches his fist, preparing to strike Pildu, who is running towards him, claiming that being a salaryman is difficult. Chung-sun swiftly avoids a swing of the hammer and delivers an uppercut to Pildu. He tells Pildu that he didn't expect him to show up. Pildu responds by saying that he is the same as before, a former MMA second-place champion. Chung-sun claims that he has changed a lot and asks if Pildu wants to fight with his brother. He further suggests that Pildu should ask for his brother's forgiveness, as nothing good will come from their fight. Pildu replies that it is a family matter and has nothing to do with Chung-sun. Chung-sun asks him not to be cold and tries to let him know about his position, saying that he also knows him. Pildu sprints towards him, saying that he is not here for idle talk and tells Chung-sun to move out of his way. Chung-sun thinks that Pildu talks the same way as his brother, which makes him angry. He swiftly hits Pildu's elbow, causing him to drop the hammer. Chung-sun then tries to hit him with a punch, but Pildu evades it and counters. Chung-sun blocks Pildu's attack and quickly lands a punch on his face, knocking him down and causing him to bleed. Chung-sun questions Pildu's power, wondering if he wants to go against his brother and the entire Manhwa. He asks Pildu to come with him and not to be overconfident. Kong-mu woke up from his bed and felt curious about someone's arrival. Meanwhile, Chung-sun knocked Pildu out but made it clear it was nothing personal and he was just acting out of necessity. When he tried to drag Pildu, Pildu unexpectedly stood up, surprising Chung-sun. Chung-sun thought about hitting him again, as he believed Pildu was as stubborn as his brother. However, Pildu managed to push him against the wall with force. Chung-sun hit Pildu's back with his elbow, causing him to stumble. Even then, Pildu pushed Chung-sun against the wall even harder. Chung-sun realized that Pildu was trying to get closer, knowing he was at a disadvantage in close combat. Then, Pildu pretended to throw a punch, tricking Chung-sun, which allowed him to land a good punch. Kong Pildu is on top of Chung-sun, trying to choke him. Chung-sun, fueled by anger at Pildu being Kong-mu's younger brother, retaliates swiftly. He drives his knee into Pildu's back, sending him tumbling to the ground. Pildu quickly recovers and charges back at Chung-sun. Meanwhile, Chung-sun remembers Kong-mu's vague instructions to bring Pildu back, unsure of the condition required. Pildu swings a punch at Chung-sun, who deftly dodges and then targets Pildu's leg with a move he's seen in MMA fights. Chung-sun wraps himself around Pildu's leg, applying pressure that causes intense pain. Chung-sun senses the danger of a broken leg and considers surrendering. But Pildu manages to twist the hold, gripping Chung-sun's leg with determination. Chung-sun realizes Pildu's intent to cause harm from the beginning and refuses to give in. With a sharp crack, Pildu breaks Chung-sun's leg and calmly walks away towards the house. While enduring the pain of his leg, Chung-sun grimly asserts that Kong-mu doesn't go easy on him simply because he's his little brother, hinting that their next clash won't follow previous patterns that they had. He dismisses any of his assumptions from everyone's perspective that Chung-sun's care for him revolves around money and other motives. Chung-sun denies them and reveals his lifelong inability to defeat Kong-mu, admitting he never even had any illusions of his victory. Chung-sun elaborates on Kong-mu's ruthless tactics, explaining that Kong-mu's fights does not tend only to victories. They are about forcing his opponents to kneel or face brutal consequences, including death if they resist. He cautions Pildu to think of his choices wisely, stressing Kong-mu's unwillingness to entertain losing battles. Chung-sun bluntly threatens Pildu that entering that door means certain his demise, claiming that his own desire for a running away to survive. Claiming that he has nowhere left to hide, Pildu presses the house's doorbell, alerting Kong-mu inside. The door swings open to reveal Kong-Pildu, his younger brother, bearing a face bruised by their violent encounter. Kong-Pildu tries to throw a punch when the door opens, but stops short when he sees his sister-in-law. Chung-sun expects Pildu to leave after greeting his sister-in-law, but instead, Pildu punches him. Pildu asks where Kong-mu is, ready to hear it even if it means he might die. Pildu keeps hurting Chung-sun by stepping on his broken leg, demanding he tell him or face death. Chung-sun says Kong-mu is one of the presidents at Manhwa Group. His last advice to Pildu is to give up. Pildu sarcastically agrees and gives Chung-sun another choice. Either tell him where Kong-mu is and possibly die, or refuse and face death right there. Kong-mu emerges from his mansion, visibly annoyed from being disturbed during his sleep, and confronts the men who were caught by his guards, questioning how they knew his location, which was supposed to be confidential. One of them claims he was waiting in his car for a friend. Kong-mu, looking at surveillance photos in his camera of him with another woman, scoffs at the excuse and asks if this man is the supposed friend. He disregards their explanations, striking the man's face with the camera, causing a gush of blood. A guard presents an ID card showing the man is from the Manhwa Group's business support department, under Kong-mu's elder brother. Kong-mu reflects on how his brother still distrusts him despite him fulfilling and complying with all of his demands. When the guard suggests handling the situation quietly, Kong-mu insists they send the man back. The puzzled guard questions if they should investigate why he sneaked in. Kong-mu strikes him for not following orders, after which they release the men. Kong-mu interrogates team leader Choi, lighting a cigarette, about the security breach. The guard explains he was protecting the mansion. Kong-mu instructs him to make a call and prepare a fighter to help him release stress before an upcoming event with his brother. Meanwhile, at Kong-mu's house, Chung-sun lights his cigarette and insists he's clueless about the situation and that he is disliking to stay in one place for long in the recent times. With Mu increasing his bodyguard count, who were all well respected in the industry, Chung-sun argues with Pildu that going alone is like signing up for suicide. Pildu shrugs it off, but Chung-sun urges him to reconsider, citing Mu's sharp instincts and the potential consequences if things go in the other direction. After finishing his cigarette, Chung-sun mentions a place Mu frequents alone and decides to contact Pildu, asking him to wait until then since he doesn't know when he will go. Pildu, impatient, retorts that waiting wasn't part of his plan. Chung-sun picks up his ringing phone and informs someone he'll be coming, and tells them that he will prepare it soon, giving a meaningful glance to Pildu. Pildu arrives at an abandoned factory in his car. He confronts the driver and secretary before entering the factory. He recalls Chung-sun's words that there are many factories that the Manhwa Group owns, the number being close to 145. He claims that the outside world knows what happens inside. Kong-mu knows about this very well and says, His driver and secretary will be outside. Chung-sun says that he'll get to know when he reaches the third storage room. When Pildu asks what he does, he says it is like his hobby which only he can enjoy. In a factory where no one watches, he plays a game while ignoring all rules. Pildu walks to the room and sees Kong Mu. Mu starts to speak while facing the money on the table, that he can take as much money as he can if he defeats him. Pildu questions if he can take something he wants. Pildu days he doesn't need money and wants to know who killed his mother. Realizing the person is his little brother, Kong Mu says there isn't anyone he could trust in this world. Pildu asserts he never had a problem with that since he never trusted anyone to begin with, especially his family. Mu says the reason he was abandoned by his family is his attitude, which is hated by everyone. Pildu corrects him saying that he was the one who had abandoned his family. Mu says he wasn't surprised at all when he said he wanted to live away from his family. Mu says that it is natural for him, and throws a pile of money into the air while trying to sneak a punch in the middle of the flying money, which Pildu evades easily. Kong Mu uses this to clarify that he is not blinded by money, which is the other reason he does not fit in not just in his family but also in Manhwa. Mu sprints forward and delivers a punch, which is blocked by Pildu. Mu goes for a kick right at his chin and follows it up with a direct kick to his face, knocking him back and falling on the ground. Mu asserts that he didn't come here to joke around with him and asks him to get serious. Pildu stands up and his talkative nature when compared to his action till now. Mu charges towards Pildu and punches him, quickly landing another kick on him, making him vulnerable. Just as Kong Mu is trying to hit him again, he evades it swiftly. Kong Mu claims that he's lucky since he could have been on the ground if it landed. Pildu wipes off the blood from his nose. He offers to help him answer his question directly from his dead mother if he is going to waste his time. Pildu finds a screwdriver while responding to him and asks when he plans to start trying. Kong Mu gets angrier for taking until the end. Meanwhile, outside the factory, the people who were caught by Kong Mu were waiting in the car and talking to Kong Taegu over the phone. He says no one has made it out yet and confirms Pildu's entry into the factory. He affirms that everything is going as per his plan and affirms Kong Mu that they think everything is laid out by his big brother. He questions if he wants him to watch over them, to which Taegu advises them to leave the place and not to get caught since the situation might get tricky. He commands them to go into hiding for some days, thinking of it as a vacation. Lighting a cigarette, Taegu thinks that the power of the universe is coming towards him. He thinks about how dumb Pildu is in going towards that factory at that time all alone. The guard beside Taegu asks him if it will be game over if the second eldest son catches him while they stay right there. When Taegu questions the person, he clarifies by taking Pildu's name. He claims that he is calling Pildu's name like a friend of his, so he apologizes. Knowing about Kong Mu, he recalls the incident at the warehouse where Kong Mu fought against the gangsters of Gangbuk all by himself. Finishing his sixth cigarette, Taegu claims to know about his craziness for fighting but acknowledges Pildu is the kind of person who will do anything to acquire what he desires and comments on him being a psycho. He assures that Pildu will certainly bring trouble. In the factory, Pildu tries to attack with a screwdriver, when Kong Mu is near to him while delivering his punch. As Pildu is about to strike him with a screwdriver to his head, Kong Mu stops him with his hand and says he expected this since he knows him too well. He follows up with a kick, sending Pildu backwards. He thought only Taegu would resort to using such kind of tools while catching the screwdriver. He confirms that Pildu is as dirty as Taegu and asks Pildu if he is some kind of a thug. Kong Mu asks if that was the reason Pildu sent away his mother in that manner. When Pildu questions the reason, his mother reaches out to him for help. He says a person like him should have stayed at home, but complaining will not change anything. Kong Mu sprints towards him while commanding him to focus since he has no time to spare when Pildu is looking at his surroundings. Pildu throws some sand onto his face, making it difficult to see. Pildu starts to land a barrage of punches on Kong Mu, which he blocks with his hands. Kong Mu asks if he wants to continue since he can take more hits, after recovering his vision. Pildu desperately tries to land a punch on Kong Mu. Kong Mu quickly evades his punch by a small gap and lands his punch on Pildu's face, knocking him back again. Kong Mu offers him to forget this matter and about his mother's death and to work for his company. He claims he will forget about something like this if he gets his hands on some money. He asks Pildu to soften up so that they can assign him to work to do. Pildu replies he doesn't like getting tired of dirty work and claims to have seen the accounting papers, which he concluded that they have been getting lazy in dumping the disposable waste due to a shortage of funds, while he turns a valve near to him. He says it is illegal to pile it in a factory and dump it on a rainy day. He continues to act like a prosecutor and says that under the Water Control Act, he could face up to 7 years in prison or a fine of up to 70 million won. Kong Mu claims that he is acting like a nerd and to get his hands off that since it's expensive. He turns the valve faster and says that the simplified version of his explanation would be to put the trash in the trash bin. The readings of the pressure gauges go up in value and smoke starts to leak from the pipes which are around them. Kong Mu responds in fear that the smoke is toxic and Pildu advances towards him, delivering a hard punch. They begin to exchange blows in the smoke-filled area. Both of them try harder to knock down the other person. After a series of traded blows, when Mu punches him, Pildu grabs him by his shoulder and punches his face directly, resulting in both of them standing toe-to-toe. While gasping for air, both of them try to leave their final punch and they get knocked down by each other. When Kong Mu tries to get up, he sees Pildu recovering from the fall and sprinting towards him with that screwdriver. He manages to get on top of Kong Mu and proceeds to hurt him using the screwdriver, which Kong Mu tries desperately to stop him. When he pierced his chest, Kong Mu screamed at him to stop hurting him. Pildu screams at him asking for the name of who has killed his mother. After a while, the door opens. Pildu comes out of the room with blood on his hands and bruises on his face. Pildu exits the building, struggling with pain from the fight. Kong Mu also follows him after some time and curses him, claiming that he won't be left alone after leaving him in this condition. After a while, Kong Mu walks out with his bloodied hands, and a figure in the car at a distance watches him. Kong Mu calls his guards on the phone and commands them to come immediately to his location, and also to gather everyone from the headquarters, commanding them to bring Kong Pildu to him, asking team leader Choi Chung-sun. When asked about the team leader, he shouts at them since Chung-sun is the one who told Pildu. Suddenly a person strikes Kong Mu from the rear with a knife. It is none other than Taegu, who covers his mouth and calls Pildu an idiot since he couldn't take care of him, making him clean up his mess. When Kong Mu struggles to talk, Taegu claims that he is still looking down on him, and he recites his plan that he has to die in Pildu's hands so that it goes according to his plan. When the secretary and driver come running, Taegu pierces him deeper into his wound again and hides the knife behind. When the guards question Taegu about his presence, he quickly shouts at them and says that neither of them saw Pildu who arrived here. He presses the knife wound on Mu and shouts at them for being close to him when his brother is dying. Continuing his act to save his brother, he curses Pildu and shouts at them for not calling an ambulance right away, threatening their lives if his brother doesn't get to live. Kong Mun, with a low voice, says no matter his struggle, he can never have the Manhwa group. He claims to have told everything to Pildu. Making a furious face, he shouts at them to help bring the ambulance here. He continues to act like a savior until they are out of sight. He asks him to worry about his life, not about him, and starts to choke him to death. He says he will follow up on his death with Pildu in no time. Meanwhile, in the house, Kong Cha-wook pours some medicinal wine into the cup of his father Kong Il-do, which is his favorite, and claims it took some time to prepare it for him. His father acknowledges that it is different by looking at its color and is unsure about its taste since he has only had cheap liquor since he entered the political scene. He claims he must repay Cha-wook for getting such precious liquor and questions him. Cha-wook responds he just wants to have a drink with his father. His father tells him to ask for his help like a man, and he will certainly help if it means helping his son. Cha-wook opens up that there has been noise in the management team, and they were trying to find fault with him for not having proper inner control. He asks him to attend the next general shareholders meeting and settle things. Just when he tries to acknowledge himself, his secretary interferes them by barging into the room unannounced and whispers something in the ears of Kong Il-do. He is followed by another person who informs something to Kong Cha-wook. His father lights up a cigarette and asks him to have this drink the next time since everyone is causing a fuss when the presidential election is near. Ildo claims everyone is making a fool of themselves instead of being helpful. Kong Cha-wook apologizes for not taking care of them beforehand. His father puts out the cigarette in the drink cup and stands up to leave. He asks his secretary not to leak this news to the public and advises Cha-wook to take care of his little siblings before handling a company. This angers Cha-wook. His father also advises him to get something the other person desires the most at that moment if he wants something desperate from someone instead of some liquor. After Kong Ildo leaves, Cha-wook drinks a cup of wine with the cigarette butt. He orders his men at the back to bring him what he desires at the moment. The doctors come out of the operation theater and inform the guards asking Taegu, who is present there, that the operation was a success and Kong Mu is saved. Taegu gets furious after listening to this. He brings a get-well-soon present and talks to Chung-sun to be cheerful since this is not a funeral. When he asks about his presents, Taegu asks him about his leg. He lies to him saying that he fell down some stairs. He gives him the gift basket saying it is expensive and it's a waste to give it to Kong Mu. He walks into the room and says it must be great to be a president since he was admitted to a 4-person hospital room when he got stabbed, and wondering if this room is a hotel or a hospital. Taegu walks up to him and tells him to say something, and not to lie down. He wonders if he is listening to him or putting down a show just to hinder him. He feels like killing him and says it was a joke since his boys are around and he cannot do anything. He claims to visit him out of curiosity since he cannot understand why Pildu has left him alive, no matter how much he thinks about it. When he asks about their discussion back then, his heart rate rises, suddenly causing the doctors to arrive and check his condition. Taegu leaves the room, thinking that he doesn't want to talk about it. He thinks of finding it out himself from Pildu. He walks to his car and enters it, only to be surprised by seeing the first elder brother Cha-wook in his car. Taegu questions his presence here and says that he could have called him if he wanted to meet him. Cha-wook wanted to do that, but Taegu seemed busy since he was always outside, claiming that the more desperate one should be on the move. Looking at the doctor's property reports in his hands, her claims that Kong Mu won't be the same when he wakes up. Taegu agrees with him since he has lost much blood and he'd be at his funeral if he didn't find him. Tightening the paper, he claims that the person wanted to kill him, seeing as he assumed right for his lungs. He wonders that the person must be adept with knives since it was a single precise strike. Taegu bites his nail with fear. Cha-wook claims Pildu never uses such tactics since he knows him very well, and this type of method is used by Taegu since he was the one who taught him to use knives. Taegu trembled with fear when Wook tore those papers and said the doctors were not doing their jobs properly, and they should have taken him out since the company would be in trouble if they left him in that state. He asks Taegu to come to the headquarters tomorrow since it's bad to leave Kong Mu's spot empty for long. While he exits the car, Cha-wook warns Taegu not to do anything stupid behind his back. Taegu thought his heart was going to explode due to the tension. He tries to calm down since there isn't any evidence to prove that he was the one who did it. He thinks Cha-wook is just messing with him and feels glad that he is finally in the headquarters. He picks up his ringing phone and says that he is called at the right moment, and orders him to pack his stuff at his office since they are moving to the headquarters tomorrow. Suddenly a person shouts calling him and saying that Kong Pildu has come to his office and swept the whole office in search of something. He was about to say more. Pildu knocks him down. Pildu wonders why it was so hard to see him, and it makes sense since he is finally going to the headquarters. While stamping the guard's face, he says that his childhood dream had come true and wanted to send him a present to congratulate him. He looks at his phone to see a video of him stabbing Kong Mu from the rear and reacts violently to it. Setting his reaction, Pildu jokes he is glad that he likes it. He gives him 2 offers, either to bring that present to the headquarters or if he wants to come and take it from him. Following this, we see Kong Taegu driving into the city, where he is supposed to meet up with his men. Upon arriving there though, he is pissed off seeing that there weren't enough men as he had hoped. His men excuse that this is because the call was made at the very last hour by Kong Taegu, and this was all they could gather in the given time. Kong Taegu is absolutely irate because of this, so he angrily tries to charge at the guys, but his rage blinds him and he ends up running into a post and falling down. He quickly gets back up and confronts the guy about why other members of the group didn't come. The guy says that it is because those guys went to a lower town to attend some club opening there. After all, Kong Taegu had told them that he had spent a fortune building those clubs. This angers Kong Taegu beyond control, and he ends up slicing the guy's mouth open with a knife. He yelled out and asked if it was really important for them to go visit club during such a tough time. After all, Kong Pildu was inside the karaoke bar, and they need to do something about it. So he orders everyone to come back as soon as possible. That being said, Kong Taegu realizes that he can't be waiting for everyone to come, but he is also afraid of messing up by going alone. After much thinking, Kong Taegu orders his first batch of men to pick up their weapons and go inside. The guys do as suggested and take baseball bats to go inside the karaoke bar. Meanwhile, the senior batch of the group also think of going in to help, but Kong Taegu tells them to wait, and that there was no need for the main squad to go inside with the juniors. After all, he thinks that just those guys would be enough to get the job done. Because there is only one way out, and that is the main entrance. So, he thinks that those guys going in and wearing Kong Pildu out would cause the guy to come out. And when he does come out, that will be their chance to pounce on him. The scene then changes to the headquarters, where we see a man entering the building to meet Cha Wook. The man is none other than Seo Nam Bong, the managing director of the Manhwa group. Nam Bong asks Cha Wook if he called Kong Taegu to join the headquarters. Cha Wook confirms the speculation. He says that they can't really keep Kong Mu's position empty for too long, and as the tradition goes, the person next in line will inherit the vacant position. Cha Wook questions why Nam Bong is curious about that, asking Nam Bong if he wants that spot for himself. Nam Bong makes it clear that he can't even think of that, but he is a bit worried about the whole matter. After all, there is a reason why Cha Wook had kept Kong Taegu away from the headquarters for so long. He isn't the same person as Kong Mu, and is much harder to control. Cha Wook agrees with that. He says that if Kong Mu was an obedient dog, Kong Taegu is the mad dog without any control. He is the type of dog that needs to be leashed and controlled. Even then, Nam Bong feels that naming Kong Taegu the president will cause problems. Cha Wook tells Nam Bong that he needs to learn about how this business operates. He asks Nam Bong if he really thinks Cha Wook is making Kong Taegu the president because the spot is empty. If so, that is a no because he wants to keep his enemies close. He wants to keep him close and monitor him, and who knows, Kong Taegu might actually change as a person when the power comes to his hand. He points out how Seo Nam Bong looks like an average salaryman while wearing a suit. This is contrary to his mouth and checkered past. So, he tells Nam Bong to just relax, as he will be the one handling the business with Kong Taegu. He just wants to see him from up close and judge if he has any qualities in him. Nam Bong questions if it is okay for Cha Wook to do this to take care of Kong Pildu, saying he can also take care of that matter if there is a need. Cha Wook, though, says that only they, the brothers, know how the other one is going to act. And they all know that the one troublesome brother of them has the entire lifeline of the Manhwa group in his grasp. The scene subsequently shifts to inside the karaoke bar, where we can see that many of Kong Taegu's men are seen tired after a long and drawn-out fight. On the other side, we see that a lot of them have gone down, thanks to the prowess of Kong Pildu. The ones resting had enough and go straight towards Pildu with baseball bat in hand. The first one goes for a cross-batted swing at Pildu, but Pildu sidesteps and nails him with a perfect right hand, knocking him down. He almost wastes no time and goes after the second guy, taking him out with a properly timed left hook to the gut. This allowed for an opening, which was exploited by the third guy, who managed to land a thudding strike with a baseball bat to the shoulder and head region of Pildu. However, Pildu shakes it off and hits the guy with a wicked right hook, knocking him out. As everyone went down, only one guy remained to fight Pildu. Despite being tired and bleeding from his head, Pildu gave the guy the most frightening stare he had ever seen. The guy starts trembling from the glare alone, and without long, he ends up running away from the place. He makes his way out of the entrance, but upon noticing that Kong Pildu was behind him, the guy screamed and informed everyone of the situation. Pildu emerged from the entrance door, alerting everyone who had been waiting until now to pounce on him. They give him no time and go for the attack. The first attacker goes for the head, but Pildu dodges and catches him with a strong punch to the midsection. The next guy immediately followed up, but his attack hits nothing as Pildu had dodged, and subsequently knocked him out with a front kick to the face. This leaves Kong Taegu seething in anger, as he brings out his knife for the fight. Huffing for breath, Pildu walks up to Taegu and tells him that if he really wanted to talk crap about his gift, he should be a man and say it to his face by himself. He asks Taegu why he had to act this way, because Pildu had thought that he liked the present. However, now it looks like Taegu is ready to cut his gut open, the same type of animosity he had with Kongmu. Pildu states that he understands that the Taegu doesn't want a little brother anymore, and wants to move up the ladder. That being said, he wonders what will happen when everyone figures out Taegu's dirty little secret. This was seemingly the final straw for Taegu, who could not handle it anymore, and he started swinging his knife. Kong Pildu immediately switches to defensive move, as Kong Taegu charges with the knife. Taegu manages to connect with a few of his slices, but he only manages to cut up Pildu's suit. As he kept slicing at him, Pildu finally manages to stop his swinging arm to potentially start a comeback. But Taegu is simply too skilled. He switches the knife from the right to his left and tries to cut Pildu with it. Pildu mostly manages to survive, and Kong Taegu goes full berserk on him. As he was doing that, Taegu had realized that this was not the same Kong Pildu from the past. He is worse now, so Taegu can definitely cut him up now. He then goes for a strong attack with the knife and even manages to connect with it. After this, Kong Taegu mocks Pildu for being too slow now. He just was not the same feared entity of the past. This made Taegu laugh as he points out how Kong Pildu was wearing a stab protection vest, which had saved him from his knife attacks for now. This made him wonder if his fearless little brother had finally learned what it meant to be afraid. He talks about how Pildu, for a second, made Taegu think that he was the old Pildu of the past, but that simply isn't the case. He is not the same guy, and it bothers Kong Taegu that everyone who is around him tries to act like they are tough, when they are not. He states that everyone will be singing a different song if they get touched by his knife. So, Taegu gets ready to finish the deal once and for all. He charges at Pildu with his knife, asking him just why did he have to show up out of nowhere, and why did it have to be during his time. Kong Pildu sees him coming, and finally clenches his fist to fight back. Taegu makes a wild swing with the knife, but Pildu manages to avoid the blow. He then loads up and hits a high kick to Taegu's hand, making his knife fly out in the air. Without hesitation, Pildu follows it up with a thunderous overhand right punch to the face, and a follow-up left hook to the gut. He finishes off the brilliant combo with a shattering right uppercut to Taegu's jaw, staggering him. However, Taegu has brilliant spatial awareness, so he manages to catch his knife and points it straight at Kong Pildu's throat. Taegu says he will be finishing off Pildu right now, but hesitates a bit, as he wondered if this will even do him any good, as it will only be favorable to Cha Wook and company. That being said, he also considers the possibility of Pildu joining up with Cha Wook and exposing Kong Taegu's secret, so he decides to might as well finish off Pildu in that place. Kong Pildu, with a cold demeanor, asks Taegu if he really thinks that taking out Pildu will secure him a spot in the upper echelon in the family. He tells Taegu to not fool himself, as he will be lucky to even secure Kong Mu's spot for him. This confuses Kong Taegu, as Pildu elaborates how Taegu should know that even if he gets a lofty new position, Taegu will still be treated like crap. This deeply angers Taegu, who yells at Pildu, and asks him if he thinks saying all this would make Taegu spare his life. Pildu keeps calm and tells him to think carefully about what he really strives to achieve. He holds the knife's blade with his bare hand, as he talks about knowing Taegu's goal. All he wants is to take over the entire family, and Pildu will help him in doing that. He will make sure Taegu has the entire Manhwa group for himself. After all, Taegu would require someone like Pildu, who can stir up a storm against the organization for him. He swiftly lowers the knife while saying all this. Taegu eventually lets go of the thought of wanting to take him out, as he realizes that Pildu has everything figured out by now. As Pildu starts walking off, Taegu tells him to stop. He asks him just what does he want for himself, and why is he helping Taegu for this. Pildu tells him that what he wants is simple. He just wants to know about the culprit behind their mother's passing. Frustrated, Kong Taegu states that he has already looked into it, and that he is sure that it was the doing of Kong Mu. He asks Pildu if Kong Mu didn't tell Pildu about it with his own mouth. Pildu informs him that it was not the doing of Kong Mu. Pildu subsequently puts forward his side of the deal. He wants Kong Taegu to go inside the lion's den himself and figure out who was involved behind their mother's passing. This is when we get a flashback of when Kong Pildu attacked Kong Mu. He was stabbing him with a screwdriver, and Kong Mu ended up conceding the fight. He also agreed to tell Pildu about everything. He told Kong Pildu that it wasn't his doing, and that he did not go there to take their mother's life. Pildu does not want to beat around the bush, and asks him why he had gone there if he did not want to take her life. Kong Mu tells Pildu that he might not care, but the inside of the Xianhua group's hierarchy is messed up. This had all begun when their father got into politics, and ended up drawing a lot of ire. The small problems were easily handled by Kong Mu and Cha Wook, but the main problem was caused by the shareholders. They wanted to take over the company. The combined shares held by the brothers and other executives simply were not enough to pay off the shareholders and the loyalists of their father from the merger. Their father is the one who built this company, but it was the sons who took it to the next level, so they could not just leave it. The shareholders also knew about it, so they started doing everything they could to get the majority. Both sides worked hard, but it eventually came down to the decisive remaining the shares, which were held by their mother. So, someone took her life to take over her shares and take over the entire company in the process. So, Kong Pildu tells his brother, Kong Taegu, who was going to the headquarters for the first time, that he wants him to dive deep and figure out the culprit behind the passing of their mother and inform him. Once he learns of that, he will take care of the rest, make sure the perpetrator ends up in the grave. Following this, we see Kong Taegu enter the Xianhua group headquarters. There, he arrives in his room, where he sees that his desk still has Kong Mu's name tag. This pisses him off and he ends up throwing away the tag in anger. He states how he had expected the staff at the headquarters to be more competent, but they turn out to be just as bad as the normal staff. He tells his guys who were doing the cleanup to become more sharp from now on, as the work will demand it. Taegu then goes to look down on the street from the building's window. He understands why people strive to get on the top, because the view from down below makes everyone else look like ants. He feels like this is what everyone should strive for, and that this is what makes being alive worth it. That being said, he also feels dizzy from looking down from so high up. It makes his head heavier. Seeing this, his men ask him if he needs some medication. However, they fail to address him by his new post of executive director, which pisses off Taegu. They quickly correct themselves and start calling him executive director. Taegu then tells his men that they don't look like they deserve to be there. They look like they're small-time workers from somewhere else. So, he tells them to upgrade their look and gives them $750 to get new suits. The guys thank him for this, and Taegu tells them to leave after that. After they leave, Taegu states how it is because of guys like them that it took him so long to get to the top. So, he tells his assistant to train them well. Following this, Kong Taegu asks his assistant if he looked into the thing he wanted him to do. The assistant says that he did, and brings out the documents supporting the research. Kong Taegu doesn't like the fact that the documents are on paper, and he would have preferred having it on something digital like a tablet. However, the assistant says that it is because they need to keep the information secure. Anyway, Kong Taegu checks the information to find a few guys who are marked as suspicious. The guy explains that they'll get to know more about them as time passes. Taegu asks him why these marked guys are supposed to be suspicious. The assistant says that it has to do with the fact that all of them got jobs in the company despite not having the academic background. Not only that, all of them had left on very suspicious terms. They resigned on the same day. Taegu asks which day they resigned on, and the assistant informs him that they did the day after Kong Taegu's mother passed away. This makes Taegu fume, as he understands that these guys must be involved in his mother's passing in one way or another. Not only that, he also understands that they must have taken huge severance fees for the resignation. The whole situation makes him pissed off, so the assistant asks Kong Taegu if he is okay. He says that he is, and asks the assistant if this was the work of the Chinese hacker they got in. The assistant says that it is, and that the person managed to figure out things just by getting access to the server. He praises the Chinese hacker to be reliable and efficient and asks if Kong Taegu wants to assign more duties to him. Taegu tells him not to do anything yet, and that he was just inquiring about him. Kong Taegu asks the assistant to let him know when the Chinese hacker comes to Korea. He will make sure to give the hacker the necessary VIP treatment. Following this, the assistant asks Kong Taegu if he should continue the previous assignment and continue with tracking down the guys they find suspicious. Kong Taegu tells the assistant to get smarter now that they have a bigger spot. He tells him not to make any rash decisions and get involved in dirty work. They can't afford it. Instead, they'll have Kong Pildu handle all the dirty work for them. Afterward, Kong Taegu tells his assistant that he is hungry, and the two go out to eat something. The scene shifts to a parking lot, where a security guard puts on a stick on someone's car, marking it for wrongful parking. This pisses off a bully, who is the owner of the car. He comes rushing in at the old man, asking him why he was vandalizing someone else's car. The old man understands that the bully is the owner, and says that he did try to contact him, but the guy didn't respond. The thing is, the car has been parked in a space allotted to the disabled people only. The bully says that he does indeed know about it, but he doesn't care. The old man tries to make him understand how it is illegal, but he needs to follow the rules. This angers bully, who picks up his sandal to beat up the old man. However, he stops midway and focuses on what was happening behind. After all, a car had abruptly come from behind and bumped into the backside of his car. He yells at the driver, asking if his eyes are for decoration only. He quickly goes over to the place and sees that the car has been damaged. The car is quite expensive and he didn't even pay the installments for the car. He tries to confront the driver, but the driver, who happens to be Kong Pildu, just shoves his face away, dropping him. Instead, Kong Pildu goes over to the old man and starts beating him to a pulp. He pulverizes the man and makes others run away in fear, thinking he is a madman. However, Kong Pildu was doing it for a reason. It was the same guy who was seen in the report of suspectees behind his mother's passing. Park Cha-woong. The guys tries to deny it, but Pildu wouldn't have any of it. The picture was old, and he has gone gray and changed his look. However, it is not enough to hide him forever. So, he starts beating up the guy again, asking him for information on the other guys involved in his mother's passing, as he vows to finish them all. Following this, we see a flashback where Park Cha-woong was still a regular at Cianhua Group's subsidiary, Cianhua Cleans. There, he was instructing young men, who were cleaning blood from the floor, to do their job better. He mentions how the young ones don't put their backs into it, and how none of them were going home before getting the job done. As he was doing so, he made his way to the head cleaner, who greeted Park Cha-woong. They both talked about the situation with the younger guys, and how they're clumsy. The head cleaner says that these young guys are the type of kids who spill food on the table, so they're no good at the work, while Park Cha-woong suggests the head cleaner to train them better. After some chit-chat, Park Cha-woong asks the guy about the good stuff and where they could be found. The head cleaner was shocked to know that the old man was still into these sort of things, and told him that he was going to hell for being like that. However, Park Cha-woong didn't care, as he thought they were already in hell on earth. Following this, Cha-woong goes to the site where the lifeless bodies of the Cianhua Group's enemies were being taken care of. A few guys picked up the lifeless bodies and put them in a car. The plan was to incinerate these bodies at a local funeral home, erasing proof. However, Park Cha-woong had other things in mind. Once everyone goes away, he goes over to the car and looks at the body. There, he sees the wounds and realizes why there was so much blood to begin with. However, he didn't really care, as he was there to steal valuable assets from the lifeless bodies. He found a gold ring on one of the guys and takes it. He does this because his salary alone wouldn't be enough to pay for the debt he has accumulated while gambling. He finds other valuable things on the lifeless ones, as they were rich. Suddenly, he starts feeling something behind him, and then the story moves back to the current time, where Pildu slaps him to get him back to his senses. Pildu was being clear he wanted Park Cha-woong to speak up. However, Park Cha-woong feigned ignorance and asked why the guy was doing this to him. He made it clear that he didn't have money, as he spent them paying back the debts, and that Pildu should do something productive instead of scamming old men for money. Pildu had enough of his blabbering, so he took some duct tape and closes his mouth off and slaps him like crazy. He then tells Cha-woong to nod his head to answer. However, Cha-woong decides against answering. Pildu understood that Cha Wung wouldn't want to talk normally, so he had something up his sleeve to make him cooperate. Pildu picks up a wooden stick and smashes it against his knee to break it in two halves. As a result, a pointy sharp end was created on the stick, which Pildu uses to stab right into Cha Wung's thighs. Cha Wung screams out in agony, but his taped mouth suppresses his sound. Cha Wung starts bleeding profusely from the blow, so Pildu lets him know that if he continues bleeding out at this rate, he will soon lose his life. So, Pildu takes a chair for himself and sits down in front of Cha Wung. He tells Cha Wung that this is his last chance to speak up here, or lose his life. He says that nobody like Cha Wung couldn't have organized such a big assassination by himself, so there must have surely been people who told him to do this. So, he shows him the list of people who had quit the Xianhua job the same day as him, and asks him if someone from there is the mastermind. Cha Wung takes a good look at it, but his blurred vision doesn't help. Despite this, he sees the glimpse of a man which reminds him of that day again. After he was caught stealing from the lifeless bodies, the Xianhua people kicked and stomped on Cha Wung, beating the living crap out of him. Just then, a higher figure arrived and told everyone that it was enough. The man subsequently came towards Cha Wung while saying that he expected better from Cha Wung, as he has been a long-time worker of theirs. After all, he should already know about what happens to people who mess with the company's good. Cha Wung apologizes a lot and tells the man that he had only done this because he was under pressure from his creditors, so he opted to steal from here. The guy states that Cha Wung just has very bad fortune because if he didn't steal from here, his creditors would take his life for not returning the money, and now that he got caught here, they'll be the ones taking his life. However, the guy goes ahead and says that he doesn't blame Cha Wung for this, because if his life was in danger, he would have opted to steal as well. He then drops the gold watch which Cha Wung had stolen. The guy states that even if Cha Wung were to auction off 10 of these watches, he wouldn't have enough money to pay back his creditors. So this was all for nothing. However, he goes on to offer him a gig which will help him get rid of his issues. He elaborates about it by saying that they need to take care of this work outside of the usual work they do for the company. This sounded fishy to Cha Wung, who questions just what they could be doing outside of the company's watch. This angers the guy who slapped him across the face. In real time, Pildu also slapped Cha Wung across the face and asked him to focus on the matter. He tells him that if he keeps bleeding like this, he wouldn't even be able to nod to answer. He shows Cha Wung the list of people again, and tells him that it has to be someone from this list. He asks him if the guy is present there. Cha Wung eventually gives in and nods to let Pildu know that he is right. He then recalls that day again. It was Yuo Suk, a former associate of the Xianhua group, who had told him to collaborate on their plan to take out the big madam. Livid, Pildu asks Cha Wung where he could find the one behind his mother's demise. Following this, the scene moves to the office building, where Kong Taigu's bald lackey was making a scene. His loud voice was making everyone around them uncomfortable, but he still kept on. He was discussing some weird encounter he had with a guy who pulled a knife on him. He was confident in his skill, so he challenged the guy to try and stab him with a stronger knife, as his belly is too sturdy to be impaled by a regular one. He jokes about how his attitude had scared off the kid and left him shaking. The other lackeys listened to him and enjoyed the story, because the baldy was just being his crazy self as always. Just then, the baldy was pulled from the back by a guy who wanted to see if he really is as tough as he says. The one who pulled him was Seo Nam Bong, and he wasted no time in punching him in the belly and taking him down. This angered the others, who went straight ahead to confront him. But Nam Bong makes easy work of them. He punches the first guy straight in the face, and then shows fluid footwork to pivot and land a massive head kick to knock out the other. Just like that, he managed to knock out everyone there. The baldy tries to crawl his way up while asking Nam Bong if he has any idea who he is messing with. Nam Bong just stomps his head down on the floor and makes it clear that he doesn't care about their status. As he is about to take things further, Kong Taigu himself intervenes. He casually points out how beating up his men in broad daylight won't be flying at his place. Upon closer inspection, Kong Taigu notices that Nam Bong decimated all of his men. Taigu then angrily confronts Nam Bong, asking if he thinks he is invincible just because he is backed by Kong Taigu's brother, Kong Cha Wook. Seo Nam Bong simply replies by saying that he only did this to teach them a lesson about the etiquette of their organization. The lobby of the building is always considered to be a mute zone, yet they were making a scene, so he just had to do it. This wasn't a justified reason for Taegu, who thinks that some chatter in the lobby shouldn't warrant such a beating. He points out how such rogue behavior is the prime reason behind the general public calling them gangsters. After all, a little fun at work is allowed everywhere. Other workplaces also allow the workers to take naps. He points out the Silicon Valley in LA to be a great example of that. Kang Taegu feels they should evolve with time and adopt modern etiquettes, and punching one's own people in the face as the first thing in the morning certainly doesn't fall under that. Kang Taegu readjusts Nam Bong's tie and reminds him that they're all working under the same company, so there's no need to get physical among themselves. He then raises the tension by bringing up how Nam Bong mentioned that the lobby is the face of the company, so he asks Nam Bong why he opted to crap on the good vibes by assaulting others. Nam Bong answers by stating that Kang Cha-wook directly asked for silence to be maintained in the lobby. This amuses Kang Taegu, as he knew that Nam Bong was just following his brother's orders. So he just decides to make his own rule as the chairman then. He tells Nam Bong that anyone who tries to mess with Kang Taegu and act smart will have their throats slit. This was a direct message for Nam Bong, as rules can be made by the chairman or someone delegated by the chairman. Going against it will result in harsh punishment, and Nam Bong won't be spared because of him having Cha-wook's backing. He makes it clear that the same blood that runs through Cha-wook's veins also runs through his own. The two have an intense stare down, as Nam Bong was on the verge of acting up on his anger. His fists were clenched up, ready to pounce, but he ended up controlling himself. He makes way for Kang Taegu, who subsequently enters the office and then enters an elevator with his right-hand man. As they are there, Kang Taegu mentions the number 15. The right-hand man quickly reminds Taegu that the 15th floor isn't under their jurisdiction, but it wasn't what Taegu was on about. Instead, Taegu was talking about the number of people who didn't bow to him in the lobby, and it made his blood boil. The right-hand man mentions how they expected this to happen, because they were already aware of their lack of popularity here. Taegu knows that, but he didn't expect it to be so big and so open. But it makes his goals clearer. Now, Kang Taegu knows that he can't just be done cleaning this office, but he needs to clear the entire house as well. The right-hand man interprets that as his intention to take out the entire organization. After they arrive at their floor, Kang Taegu asks his right-hand man about Kang Pildu and what he might be up to. The guy says that it is likely that Pildu is still dealing with the list of suspects. This upsets Taegu, who can't believe that Pildu is taking so long to do this, when it is apparent who has their mother's share. That being said, he also feels disappointed by Pildu, but it was expected for a bureaucrat to disappoint in such situations. He just blames himself for believing that his little brother could help him with the coup that he is planning. However, now that things are clear, he knows that he just has to do it himself. The right-hand man asks him if he is sure about that, because they're at a genuine lack of friends in the company. Kang Taegu tells him to not worry about that and let Taegu handle it himself, and orders him to focus on gathering a team capable enough of pulling it off. Following this, they enter the room, where Kang Taegu greets the old director, and they start their meeting. Meanwhile, at a casino, a random guy hits the jackpot out of nowhere, shocking everyone. This stunned the guys in charge of running the slot machines, as they had hard-wired the machines to never hit the jackpot at this time of the day. However, little by little, all machines were malfunctioning badly. The owner of the illegal casino, Yoo Suk, understands that this might be the work of the random guy who hit the jackpot, and orders his men to bring the guy to him so he can teach him a lesson. Meanwhile, back at the playing area, everyone was suddenly hitting jackpots. They couldn't believe what was happening. They thought that it was either a joke or they were the luckiest group of people ever. Just then, the lackeys of Osuk arrive and tell the guy who messed with the machine to come with them, as the boss wanted to see him. The guy was none other than Kang Pildu, who was waiting for this very opportunity. They ask him to come with them, and Pildu simply just brushes away the guy's hand. This makes the guy question Pildu's intention. He asks him if he intends to fight them. Pildu clears out that he doesn't intend to fight them, and tells them to just take him to their boss, agreeing to cooperate with them. The guys then escort Pildu out of the playing area to the secret room, where one of them assures Pildu that there is nothing to worry about. They will just carry out a check on him. The guy also warns Pildu that the alley they were in was the only way out of the place, so if he tried to run away, he would be in danger. However, Pildu actually likes the sound of that. Following this, they take him inside, where the guy in charge of investigating Pildu says that Kong Pildu doesn't really look like the kind of guy who would be hooked on slot machines. That being said, he did hit 3 jackpots in a row, so he instructs the lackey to check on Pildu. The lackey pats him down and tells the investigator that Pildu is clean. But the investigator isn't satisfied. He asks the lackey to check Pildu's pockets because he saw him fiddling with his pocket. The guy checks on Pildu's suit pocket and reports back to the investigator that there isn't anything. The investigator tells him to check his pant pockets. The lackey gets irritated by this because he is always forced to do these lowly jobs. Regardless, he asks Pildu to open up and lowers down near his pants to check his pockets. As he was checking there, he ends up touching Pildu's crotch. This amuses the guy, who says that he thought of Pildu as a straight-laced guy, but he is actually packing quite heat down there, and asks Pildu who the lucky lady is. He then tells the investigator that Pildu's crotch had surprised him. The investigator tells him to calm down with the touching, or else Pildu might get the wrong idea. But the guy was feeling adventurous, so he says that he might just take it a step further. This is when others notice that Pildu was pulling something out. However, the lackey was unsuspecting and thought Pildu was pulling it out to get some action. Instead, Pildu had pulled out a weapon, which he then uses to smash the guy's head. Meanwhile, at the control center, noise from the investigation room could be heard. Hearing those, Yuo Suk asked what was the racket about. The guys weren't sure what it was, but the person in charge of monitoring the security cameras lets Oh-suk know that there is an issue going on. Oh-suk goes over to see the issue, and gets to see that all of his men had already been wiped out by the guy they were investigating. This angered Oh-suk, who wondered who the guy was, and what his intentions were. Soon though, Oh-suk recognizes the guy on screen, and immediately starts panicking. He asks all of the men inside to stay firm, as he hurriedly dials up one of his former allies. Oh-suk tells the guy about the situation in hand. The guy didn't want to hear it because they were no longer partners, but Oh-suk told him that the guy, whose mother they took the life of, had sniffed him out and is out for vengeance. Hearing this, the guy on the phone gets mad and tells Oh-suk to finish off Kong Pildu right then and there and not let Kong Pildu get wind of him. He says that if Oh-suk fails to do so, both Oh-suk and his family will have to pay the price for it. Oh-suk hangs up and gets mad at what was happening. The guy he called was still bossing him around as if he was still his lackey. Oh-suk regrets doing this job in the first place and wishes he had never done it. But now that there was nothing to be done, he brings out his brass knuckles and prepares to finish off Pildu. He then asks his men to open the door and let him confront Pildu. Meanwhile, at the Manhwa Company building, Kong Taegu arrives for the special board meeting. Once there, he doesn't hesitate to take the chair of the chairman. This obviously draws out long faces from all the board members, who do not approve of it. Kong Taegu feigns ignorance and asks everyone what the problem was. This is when the board members speak up about it. They didn't like the fact that he was sitting on that chair. Kong Taegu mentions that he is a new guy at the company, so he isn't quite accustomed to all the rules. He asks if that chair is reserved for someone special. They tell him that the chair belongs to the chairman only. This is when the executive from earlier, Mr. Jang, speaks up and tells everyone to not argue about a chair. After all, it is just a chair and nothing more. Moreover, they should also consider just how long they keep the chair unoccupied because it has been a while. He also mentions that there must be a reason why Kong Taegu invited them here for a board meeting and asks them just what it is about. Kong Taegu praises Mr. Jang for his observation and experience. He then goes on to tell everyone that he has invited the people here to discuss the future of the company. This offends all the other board members though, as they think that making a decision here will definitely tick of Cha-wook. After all, this is like a declaration of war against him. Kong Taegu immediately calls out this behavior from the board members. He thinks that a company that has been built by years of hard work from the board members shouldn't be scared of what Cha-wook has to say. Moreover, the company has been under threat from other people lately, so it is not really cool for them to just sit back and let it go to ruins. He mentions there's something that the board members lack, and it is making them weak. The thing they lack is a direct blood connection to the founder, Kong Il-do, and Kong Taegu can be the missing link connecting them. Mr. Jang thinks that it was quite a fine speech from Kong Taegu, but just words won't do it. After all, they can't just change control of the company so easily like the old days. He thinks Kong Taegu should present some actual substance behind his words. Kong Taegu says that he is aware of that, so he is willing to tell them the only way they can overcome the trouble of his brother. The solution to the problem, according to Taegu, lies in the shares that were left over by his mother, who passed away. He promises to track those shares back and present it to them, and in return for that he only asks for the unwavering support of the board members. His strong speech moves Mr. Jang, who starts clapping to applaud him. Others were left confused by this, but Mr. Jang suggests that if Kong Taegu is willing to give them the wings needed to fly, the least they can do is support him in return. This convinces the board members, who join in and start clapping. This was a huge victory for Kong Taegu, who, with the support of Mr. Jang, has now pocketed the trust and support of half of the executives in the company. The next stage is to track down all the remaining shares, and with that, he can assume full control of the Manhwa company. So, now he just wishes for Pildu to hurry up and take out the guys who took the life of their mother, and help Taegu take over control. Meanwhile, at the illegal casino, the door was opened for Kong Pildu to enter. Seeing Pildu soaked in blood and with weapon in hand, Yuo Suk tells him that there was no need for him to create such a scene. He then assumes his fighting stance and tells Pildu that he will regret ever coming to track him down. The story heads back to a few workers moving around item in the office that was once used by Oh Suk and company. The room was heavily damaged, so when they came in to deliver items to that place, they couldn't help but wonder why it was in such damned condition. They wondered if they should complain about this to the people who work in the room. This is when one of them says that the people who used to work here have already resigned long ago. He also mentions that he heard that people who worked here were up to some secretive stuff. Another guy backs him up by saying that he had heard of the rumors too. The people who worked there were involved in some hush business and worked directly under the top brass. By top brass, he meant the board members. After the workers from here quit their jobs, they were given a super high severance pay. So, it is assumed that all of them probably own a building in Gangnam by now. This was quite shocking for others to think about, and it makes them wonder just what kind of work was done there. Just then, the section head comes in and tells them to quit the chit-chat and get to work. Back at the illegal casino, Oh Suk vows to teach Pildu a lesson. They stare at each other, face to face, but no one makes a move. This amuses Oh Suk, who asks Pildu if he got scared after making such a ruckus, because he was seemingly stuck on the spot. Pildu takes this in and simply signals Oh Suk and his men to come get him, as he runs off to the hallway. Oh Suk knew exactly what Pildu was doing. He was severely outnumbered, so he was trying to trap them in the narrow alleyway. Despite that, Oh Suk was confident and decided to grant Pildu his wish. He orders his men to go ahead and capture Pildu for him. However, once his men actually go out after Pildu, they're brutally beaten down by Pildu using a rod. Oh Suk thought it was quite the shame that his men weren't even able to take out one kid, who is still quite green. So, he orders the rest of the lackeys to go next and take out Pildu, but upon looking back, he realizes that all of his men have already gone after Pildu and been promptly defeated. Seeing this, he finally decides that it is time to go himself, and so he steps out. As he does so, he sees the beaten down bodies of his lackeys, which makes him understand the kind of guy he was up against. However, he wasn't able to find Pildu right away, as he was hiding. Oh Suk keeps searching for him until he feels the presence of someone hiding behind a wall. Being sure that it was Pildu, Oh Suk uses his dreaded brass knucks to throw a punch, but he ends up hitting one of his guys instead. Turns out, Pildu was actually using one of Oh Suk's own men against him as a shield. This gave Pildu the chance to come to the forefront, but Oh Suk wasn't bothered, and he just went ahead and threw another punch, because he knew that a single blow from him would knock Pildu out. But Pildu successfully counters the punch by intercepting it with his rod. The impact of the punch sends Pildu skidding back a few steps and his rod was sent flying, now left with visible dents. Pildu was shaken up by this, but Osuk wastes no time to throw a punch again. The punch seemingly hits the mark, but Pildu still wasn't down. This shocks Osuk, but he comes to understand that Pildu must have dodged the punch by chance. So, Osuk just decides to flow with the momentum and use his other hand to aim for Pildu's jaw. But like the first one, Pildu seemingly dodges it again in a split second. This makes Osuk understand that Pildu wasn't a pushover, but he was still sure that his next straight punch would do the trick, which is why he was shocked when he realized that Pildu was matching his speed and throwing a punch of his own. In fact, Pildu was quicker, but Osuk felt assured knowing that he would be able to dodge the blow. But Pildu's speed overwhelms him and the punch hits him flush on the jaw. The punch sends him tumbling back against the wall, as he wonders just what makes the men of the Kong family so strong. Osuk isn't allowed to rest, as Pildu grabs him by the head and pulls him into a devastating knee strike, dropping him. Now bloodied badly, Osuk tells Pildu that he knows that Pildu came here to gather information, but he doesn't have any. He just did what he was told to do, so if Pildu wants information, he should go elsewhere. Just then, Pildu knees him in the face again. This time, Osuk loses every ounce of strength he had in his body. Osuk starts begging Pildu for mercy, as he claims to know nothing about anything. Pildu stomps him on the face, but Osuk still claims to know nothing. But deep down, Osuk knew that if he told Pildu what he actually knew, he would take his life right there. Just then, an unsuspecting man was bringing cash to the illegal casino's control room, when he witnesses the carnage and runs to save his life. Not too long after, he was followed by Osuk, who himself was running out of the alleyway, directly into the playing zone, where he was spotted by everyone. Osuk ran away because he knew that it was simply impossible for someone like him to handle Pildu. But he was still being followed by Pildu. Osuk runs to the parking garage, where he starts looking for his phone. After finding it, he sees that the phone is low on battery, so he calls his most trusty collaborator. The guy picks up with a laid-back attitude. Osuk tries to explain the situation on hand to him, but he wasn't keen on helping, because Osuk had gotten arrogant with money coming in and broken off connections with others. Osuk apologizes to the guy, which prompts him to listen to what Osuk has to say. Osuk tells the guy about how the son of the woman they took out had caught up to him, and now he was causing problems, so he wanted the guy's help. The guy tells Osuk that he should be taking care of a kid like that by himself. But Osuk explains just how good Pildu is. The guy still doesn't care, so Osuk tells him that if this guy manages to reach the top brass, they all will be attacked by the main mastermind. The guy explains that he also doesn't like to deal with the top brass, so he would rather stay out of such matters. Osuk pleads for help and asks him to at least send a few of his men. In return, he was willing to pay him anything. Just then, a car comes from behind and runs over Osuk. This makes the guy, unpark, wonder if this was the cliffhanger of the story. But Kong Pildu picks up the phone and informs Park that his friend, Osuk, was about to kick the bucket. So, he asked him if he had any words for Osuk. Park finds his attitude to be disrespectful and tells him to not get so sigh on beating up a small fry like Osuk. He also felt bad that Osuk, a friend he liked pulling the leg of, was now done for. So, he decides to tell Pildu about the words that Osuk spoke when he was taking Pildu's mother's life. He mentioned that Pildu's mother was rather easy on the eye. He laughs about this and makes it seem funny. This is when Pildu asks Park if he has any final words to tell Osuk, because Park was the next one in line to get unalived. Park finds the cocky attitude rather amusing, and tells Pildu what his words were when they were taking out his mother. Park thought that his mother would be quite good in bed. This angered Pildu, who then stomps Osuk's head, crushing it. Meanwhile, in Hong Kong, the atmosphere was bustling. At a random dumplings shop, Sang Kai, a member of the Hong Kong syndicate and the owner of said shop, was confronting his lackeys. He was doing this because they had created an illegal casino slot rigging machine. The guys denied it, saying they didn't do it and that they're too dumb to make something like that. Sang Kai also mentions that the device had made its way to Korea. This shocked the two, because they didn't know that they had partners in Korea. One of them also mentions that the device must have been created by the junior boss, Wan Long. This surprises Sang Kai. Meanwhile, Wan Long was seen devastated in a room, and he starts destroying his computer there. He breaks all the monitors and smashes many devices in his act of rage. Sang Kai arrives there and asks Wan Long what was wrong. Wan Long says he can't handle it anymore and asks Sang Kai if he can manage to get him a passport. Sang Kai asked why he needed one, so Wan Long told him that he thinks it is time for him to head back home. Sang Kai understood that he was referring to a return to Korea and reminded him of the deal they had made with the Koreans to not interfere with their internal matters. Wan Long says that he knows about it and that it is why he thought of helping from the sidelines. But with how things were going, he could no longer bear it. We learn that Wan Long is actually Kang Yujin, the fifth son of Kang Il-do. He sobs as he wonders if he is feeling this bad from here. What was Kang Pil-do going through? The story then goes into a flashback where we see the Hong Kong city dock. There, people were inspecting the stuff that had arrived. The guys there realized that there was still one left to be checked. They decide to go check it before the people from the bureau arrive and ruin it for them like they always do. However, they do find the packaging a bit suspicious with the blood splattered over, but it was something that came straight from Korea, so they decide to open it anyway. Opening it causes a foul smell to fill the area, but they still go ahead to check on the thing. But what they see in there scares the heck out of them. The guys then run off to tell a younger Sang Kai, who was the vanguard of the Hong Kong triad, about what they had seen, and that he should come look at it himself. Sang Kai goes over there and he doesn't understand why they were freaking out. The guys tell him how there was a fiend-like creature inside the container. Sang Kai wasn't scared and asked the guys to open it for him to see. They do so, and this happened to become the first time Sang Kai met Kang Yujin, who came charging in like a ferocious animal. His first impressions of Yujin was that of an untamed beast, who dug his teeth into his skin and was refusing to let go. Kang Yujin's white hair and red hair only reminded Sang Kai of a wolf puppy. Back in current time, Sang Kai and Kang Yujin were having food together. Sang Kai asks Yujin if he had lost his appetite, to which Kang Yujin says no. Sang Kai then tells him to try out the food, because it was prepared by one of their fam, who woke up early to make it for Yujin. He tells him the meatball in particular was good. Yujin notices that Sang Kai was drinking and points it out, but Sang Kai tells him to not worry about that and focus on himself. Yujin then tries out the food for himself, while Sang Kai asks him if he is all set to go. Yujin tells him that he is, and that he does not need to pack anything extra, as he can just buy the things he needs. After trying the food, Yujin tells Sang Kai that the food was indeed as good as he had touted. Sang Kai thinks that it is only natural for him to like it, because it is Yujin's comfort food. He thinks that the taste of homely food never changes, and Yujin agrees with that. After eating, Sang Kai suggests Yujin stop staring at him and just get going instead of giving him the wrong idea. Yujin obliges, but before leaving, he tells Sang Kai that he is aware of his health condition from his prescription, so he thinks Sang Kai should tone down the drinking. Sang Kai felt offended by that. He tells Yujin that he has given him more of a headache than any alcohol while he was here. He mentions when he tried to pat the dog of the dumpling shop owner, which turned out badly for him as the dog bit his hand. If the bite was a bit higher, Yujin could have lost his life. He then recalls the time when Yujin got into a fight and beat up the mayor's son while standing up for one of his weak friends. The aftermath of that was dealt with by Sang Kai, and it was a hellish experience. He is still reminded of that incident through nightmares sometimes. Sang Kai thought Yujin would mellow down as the years go by, and he grows up, but he only became more rouge. Every day, Sang Kai would have to worry about Yujin's whereabouts and wonder if he had gotten into a fight and got himself into trouble. Not a night would pass without Sang Kai being worried to the brink of insanity. So he drank and drank to match the headache that Yujin was already giving him. This is why he finds it quite hilarious that Yujin is telling him to quit drinking. He yells out at Yujin, telling him that he has no idea what he is speaking of, because he does not know what Sang Kai had to go through. So he should just shut up and mind his own business. Yujin starts walking away when Sang Kai calls out to him by his Chinese name Long Wan. He tells him that there would be no place back home for Yujin if he messes up in Korea again. In fact, he tells Yujin to just go and live in Korea forever, because that would allow him to live a life in ease. Sang-kai finishes off by calling Yujin an ungrateful brat. As Yujin walks away, one of the workers at the shop calls out to him and tells Yujin to not mind what Sang-kai was saying, because he surely did not mean it. Yujin tells him that he knows that this is Sang-kai's way of showing affection. But the guy tells him that this time it was a bit different. He gives Yujin a packaging and tells him that ever since Sang-kai has learned of Yujin's intention to head to Korea, he did not sleep and prepared a lot of food for Yujin, because he was worried that the Korean food would no longer suit Yujin. The guy tells Yujin that he should already know by now that Sang-kai might act tough, but he is a soft person on the inside. Yujin is fully aware of that. Not for a moment had he forgotten about how Sang-kai was the one who took him in and brought him up when he was abandoned by everyone else. So, before leaving, he calls out to Sang-kai, calling him father, and promising him that he will be coming back home soon. These words made Sang-kai emotional as he tears up a little. Outside, one of the other family members, Shu, was waiting for Yujin. He tells Yujin that all the family members have gathered to greet him off. Yujin did not really like that idea, because he was basically going on a small trip to attend to business. But Shu insisted that they all greet him off properly before Yujin goes back home. Yujin corrects Shu immediately, saying home is a place where one's family is, and where one feels safe. So for Yujin, home was Hong Kong, where Sang-kai and his family were present. The place he was going back to was far from home. In fact, it was the place he had escaped, the place that felt like hell. But this time, he was going back on his own terms to do things his way. Meanwhile, at a hotel in Korea, a man inquires if everyone is present in that hotel. The hotel manager says that they were, and asks if this guy was also a part of the group. The guy says that he is in a way. The manager says that he finds it quite odd that they have rented an entire hotel for themselves, but it must mean that they are super rich. Anyway, he wants the man to get his work done quickly. As they were about close to the hotel, the man, Kong Pildu, assure the old man that he won't be taking too long to get the job done. Lungs bursting, head shoved under water. A 6-foot-tall monster laughing while he crushes your throat. Kong Pildu thought he was safe, until the reinforcements closed in. But then, the struggle stopped. He wasn't dead, he was playing possum. In one cinematic explosion of violence, the hunter became the prey. Pildu is back on his feet, and he's dealing out a punishment worse than death. But wait, who is that white-haired demon watching the massacre from the exit? Meanwhile, another day of work begins at the Manhwa Group's main office. And just like always, Jang Byum-san arrives for work. A few workers see this and talk about how Director Jang still has some power in his walk. It surprises them how he manages to come to work every day without work. But that is to be expected from one of the oldest horses of the company, who doesn't even consider retiring. He is the type of person who would like to get buried inside the building, because he thinks the company is his brainchild. One of them also brings up how there has been a huge problem with the shareholders of the company. That being said, they still think Seo Nambong is the strongest one in the company. After all, the old stockholders aren't as powerful now as they once used to be. One might say that they should have been retired by now, but are only holding on because they had Kong Il-do's goodwill. However, now that Kong Il-do has retired and is focused on dipping his toes into politics, they are out of their depth. This is when someone like Seo Nambong comes in, because he has the charisma and the backing of Kong Cha-wook. Not to mention the fact that he is not a blue-collared man and has actually put on work and effort to get where he is now. If he was putting so much effort in another company, he would have already been vice president or something, which makes it more absurd as to why he was sticking with this company. Anyway, as Nambong walks past everyone, Director Jang greets him and bows down, to which he answers back respectfully. Nambong proceeded to walk ahead again when Kong Taegu confronted him. He berates Nambong for not being the one doing the bowing and greeting to Director Jang. He mentions how it is a rule within the company to bow to the seniors. Nambong greets Kong Taegu, but Kong Taegu pushes him more by telling him to bow down properly and greet Director Jang and show him the respect he deserves. He tells him to do it right away. So Nambong, despite being pissed off, bows down properly and greets Director Jang. Director Jang appreciates the gesture and mentions how he never expected to receive a bow from Seo Nam Bong, but he considers it one of the perks of him being loyal to Cianhua Group. He also praises Kong Taegu for bringing rule and order to the company. Kong Taegu appreciates his acknowledgement and adds that it is nothing much to talk about. That being said, he does clarify that as long as he is in charge, the rules and etiquettes of the company will be maintained at all times. Director Jang thinks this is great and something that even the old chairman would be in support of. After this, they decide not to waste time in the lobby and go inside and have a conversation over tea. After this, Seo Nam Bong's men talk about how rumors they heard about Director Jang are true. There is a reason why he is still hanging around after so long, and that is because of his controlling skills. They also understand that Director Jang is now affiliated with Kong Taegu. As for Kong Taegu, he is not that big of a deal by himself, but when teamed up with someone as experienced as Director Jang, they can collectively pose quite a threat to them. So, they think it is only logical for them to make a move before Kong Taegu. However, Nam Bong tells his men to shut up, as they were still standing in the lobby. While Nam Bong watches Taegu and Director Jang walk off, he understands that he is against a sly young fox and a grizzled old veteran. The two of them together are a huge nuisance, and their current actions are deliberate and provocative. They want Nam Bong to do something, but Nam Bong is not naive. He knows how to avoid the bait, but he is sure that the time for him to take action against the duo is also around the corner, and he can't be more eager to hit them for picking on him. Subsequently, Nam Bong tells his men to not make a move in response to Kong Taegu or Director Jang before they are ordered to. He also reassures them that the time for them to make the move is coming soon, so they must stand firm until then. After that, Nam Bong receives a notification on his phone. Upon checking it, Nam Bong tells his men to move on ahead without him, as he heads out of the building himself. Nam Bong thinks about how the boss told him not to make a move on Kong Taegu and co., but he is also not the kind of man who would let someone else dictate the tempo around him. Suddenly, his rage starts to come out, as Nam Bong declares that he will be taking care of the problem by himself. Meanwhile, back at the spa hotel, a bunch of sweaty, tattooed gangsters were relaxing after a shower. This is when Kong Pildu enters the room. Seeing him, the gangsters are annoyed. They had specifically tipped the old man receptionist to not let anyone other than people of their gang inside. They tell Kong Pildu that they're closed, and that he has come to the wrong place. However, Kong Pildu is pretty damn sure that he came to the right place because he came there after tracking the exact location from where Unpark made the call from. Hearing this, the gangsters are pissed. They tell Kong Pildu to get lost right away, and also tell him that no one of his interest was there. However, Kong Pildu stood his ground, and it pretty much expressed that he had no intention to leave. One of the gangsters, stepping forward, lets Kong Pildu know that he is not interested in working up a sweat after a nice shower, and that he should just leave calmly. Kong Pildu, though, didn't care and picked up a razor laying on the ground. The guy tells Kong Pildu to leave several times, but as Kong Pildu simply ignores him, the guy decides to smack some sense into Kong Pildu. But before he can try to do so, Kong Pildu breaks off the blade part of the razor and uses the sharp neck part and shoves it inside the guy's throat. The guy bleeds out profusely before falling down. Noticing this, the other gangsters are stunned. One of them then orders all of his men to just attack Kong Pildu at once. Kong Pildu was prepared though. He kicked the first guy coming right on the head. The second guy comes in, and he uses the motion from the kick to spin around and hit the guy on the face with his elbow, knocking him out. He then continues by knocking out a third guy with an uppercut, subsequently followed by another punch that knocks out another dude. He then kicks another guy flush on the face, before slowly managing to wipe all of them out, leaving him looking ahead while huffing for breath. Kong Pildu then decides to freshen himself up by washing his face. As he does so, he comes to understand that he is no longer as good as he used to be. This is mostly because he restricted himself by staying behind a desk for years, restricting his physical capabilities severely. He stayed away from this type of life for the longest time possible. He didn't want to be like this, yet he still got dragged into it. After freshening up, Kong Pildu brings out his phone and calls the number Unpark called from. This results in a ringtone going off inside the spa room of the hotel, indicating Unpark was there. So, Kong Pildu prepares himself to go inside, as he understands that all of this must be written in his fate. Afterwards, Kong Pildu enters the massage spa room. Initially, he finds the room to be quite empty, so he explores deeper inside. Eventually, he finds Unpark inside the bathtub with a bunch of girls with him. Unpark jokes about how it is bad etiquette to not strip down when entering a spa, so he offers Kong Pildu to join in on the fun. He thinks the spa here was quite good, so he tells Pildu to join in, as it would help them get to know each other better. Kong Pildu replies by saying he hasn't come all the way here for a bath. He then warns the ladies to get outside before things get messy. The girls try to seduce him, wanting to stay around and have some fun with him too, because he was just their type. Unpark tells them that Kong Pildu doesn't want them to be in on the fun, and expresses disappointment over Kong Pildu being a party pooper. So, he asks the ladies to leave for a while and reassures them that it won't take long. The ladies subsequently make their way out, as Kong Pildu sits and waits. After they leave, Unpark mentions how it hasn't been long since he made that call with Pildu, yet he had already tracked him down with quite ease. He assumes that Pildu must have tracked him because of that damned phone of his, even though he spent a lot of bucks on the phone because it promised top-tier privacy. Pildu mentions how the phone emits a high-frequency signal, which is easy to track. Further helped that he was using a phone that can only be used to call one person. Furthermore, Pildu guesses that someone works above Unpark as well based on them using these encrypted phones. Unpark praises him for being smart and thinks that he would make for quite a nice detective. That makes it more absurd as to why he is dipping his toe into something so useless. Unpark then questions if Kong Pildu really thought that Unpark would stay here, unprepared. Unpark informs him that he had indeed prepared men to give Kong Pildu the perfect welcome party. Unfortunately though, Kong Pildu has arrived a little too quickly, messing up their surprise. That being said, the guys were already on their way to Mapo Bridge, so there would be like 10 more minutes until Kong Pildu is finished off. Unpark admits that it was quite the cheap move from his behalf, but it is not like he had much of a choice. If his boss finds out that Kong Pildu tracked him down using just the phone, Unpark would find himself in trouble. Listening to this, Kong Pildu understands that his assumption of there being someone above Unpark is correct. Unpark adds more that the guy above him is a crazy guy who goes berserk over little things. He is one of those people who one would never want to work with after the first time. He thinks Kong Pildu would know a thing or two about that, as he has worked in companies. Kong Pildu makes it clear to him that in a normal company, people like Unpark and his boss are called thugs. However, Unpark doesn't agree with that. He puts on his underwear, while talking about how people like him are ideal citizens who pay their taxes on time. He thinks there is no shame in doing honest and hard work. Furthermore, if criminals like him don't do what they do, a lot of people wouldn't even have their job, so there is that. Unpark states how in his world, everyone is going after everyone. In such an environment, the strong devours the weak. So, it would be wise to say that Kong Pildu's mother was useless and had no influence over the company, which is why he lost her life like a dog. This pisses off Kong Pildu, so he finally gets up. He mentions how Unpark told him that he has about 10 minutes before people arrive to take him out. In that case, Kong Pildu wants to use that 10 minutes to inflict the worst possible pain on Unpark, something he hasn't ever felt before. Unpark finds this interesting, and adds that he was also getting bored waiting, so this will be a breath of fresh air. And just like that, the two of them were ready and charged at each other with intention to finish the other. Kong Pildu goes to throw a cross-right punch. This is when Kong Pildu realizes that Unpark was a tall guy, being above 6 feet tall. However, when Unpark dodges his punch and hits Pildu with a counter-hook punch, he understands that Unpark was super fast too. He understands that Unpark was among the top tier of the gang, so he is on a whole different level compared to others. This was shown on display more when Unpark followed up his refined movements with a kick to the chest. He then grabs Kong Pildu by the back of the neck and throws him across the room. Kong Pildu crashes against the wall, but the relentless Unpark jumps in with a kick, trying to smash Kong Pildu's face. However, Kong Pildu avoids the kick and swiftly goes for Unpark's other leg and takes him down to the ground. Kong Pildu then starts raining down punches on Unpark. Eventually, Unpark catches his arm and pulls Kong Pildu into a headbutt, startling Pildu. This stunned Pildu, as he couldn't wrap his head around how Unpark was unfazed by his blows and still attacked him. Unpark tries to regain control by hitting a roundhouse kick to Pildu's head, but Pildu blocks it. Despite that, Pildu is sent skidding back. Pildu understands that the huge reach advantage is what's making Unpark so imposing. Unpark adds some more spice by continuing his strikes with some trash talking in between. He questions where Pildu's cool act from earlier disappeared to. Kong Pildu realizes that keeping up with Unpark is a tough deal by itself, but Pildu also needs to finish him off before the reinforcements come in. Unpark follows up with a few more punches. Kong Pildu takes them in and finds a gap in Unpark's defense and exploits it with 2 hard punches. He understands that he just needs to close the distance a bit more to take control, so he goes to hit Unpark with a wicked uppercut. However, Unpark simply catches the punch. This shocks Kong Pildu. Teasing Kong Pildu, Unpark mentioned how there was no reason to rush, before asking him if he got scared thinking about the incoming reinforcements. Finally, Kong Pildu comes to remember that Unpark's fighting style felt familiar for a reason. It is because he fought eerily similarly to Pildu's older brother. And this wasn't pleasing for Pildu to think about. But this wasn't stopping Unpark from insulting him, and he takes it a step further by hitting Pildu with an open-handed smack. The smack rattles Pildu and sends him sliding back. So, Unpark uses that opportunity to load up and strike Pildu with a kick, sending him flying back into the bathtub. Unpark tells Pildu that he should have picked up on his deal about having the girls around, because now it'll be awkward for the 2 of them to be alone inside the tub. After that, Unpark gets inside the tub and kicks Pildu's head like it was a football, making it snap back at brutal force. Kong Pildu starts coughing and gagging from the beating, which disgusted Unpark, because he now has to change the water. Unpark then goes on to grab Kong Pildu's throat and start choking him out while pushing his head down underwater. He tells him to get a taste of the water while he gets his life choked out of him. Kong Pildu struggles and tries to get out, but Unpark suggests he doesn't move, as he will be better off staying still than cause himself more trouble. Unpark starts putting more effort into choking Pildu out, while simultaneously talking about how people often ask him why he left such a nice job, when they don't know anything about it. Behind the flashiness and designer suits was the dark side. The guy he was working under was a nutcase, and someone that even scared Unpark. He is unwavering and only cares about achieving his goals. It just so happened to be that Kong Pildu's mother was an obstacle he had to get rid of. The mention of his mother angers Kong Pildu, so he tries to fight back. But Unpark just chokes him harder to subdue him. Unpark mentions he went through a lot of hard work to get out of that setting, yet now Pildu was dragging him right back into it again. After choking him out for a while, it seemed like Pildu had finally stopped breathing for good, as his constant struggle came to a halt. Unpark then notices a notification sound going off on his phone. The phone was about to tip into the water, so Unpark lets go of Pildu and saves the phone. He was a bit worried that it would have dropped into the water and cost him his insurance just because of Pildu. However, in a shocking turn of events, Kong Pildu had gotten back up and he wastes no time in striking a seated Unpark with a round kick to the face, drawing blood and stunning him. Unpark couldn't believe how Kong Pildu had gotten back up. Pildu was just playing possum and now he was on the attack. He smashes his elbow down on the back of Unpark's neck, incapacitating him. Kong Pildu then grabs Unpark's head by force and starts smashing it down on the concrete floor constantly. After a while, he turns him around to show how Unpark's face was a mess. As Kong Pildu brings up how he had promised to punish Unpark worse than he has ever experienced before, and how he has delivered upon it, Unpark can't help but see the parallels between his former boss and Kong Pildu, and it was scaring him more. Afterwards, Kong Pildu finishes off Unpark with a one last strike. After that, Kong Pildu retrieves the phone and prepares to leave. He tried to check on the phone and tried contacting the one working above Unpark, but the phone stopped working. It was probably because the water had damaged the phone's internals. Kong Pildu suddenly feels the after effects of such a gruesome fight, and it causes him to collapse down. Kong Pildu understood that he didn't have much time left, and that he had to escape before the reinforcements came in. Suddenly, Kong Pildu feels as if the reinforcements had already arrived. However, he could only feel the presence of one man. He assumed that a lot of people would be here, but he also thinks that it could be one very strong man. This is when the man speaks up, stating how he knows that swimming has never been a strong point of Pildu. The man there was none other than Kong Yujin, Kong Pildu's younger brother. After this, Seo Nam Bong arrives at the place, but he sees how all the gangsters have been wiped out in the spa. He understands that he is probably a bit too late to do anything, but it still bothered him nonetheless. He realizes how he had underestimated Pildu's abilities too much. He doesn't understand why the big boss is letting Kong Pildu roam freely like. Not to mention, Park's phone was missing too, so Pildu was far from being done. Nam Bong then enters the room ahead of him, and there, the situation was different. All the men sent for reinforcements had been wiped out, yes, but this was different. These guys were taken out with more precise attack. The way they were finished off was almost surgical. It looked less like a beatdown and more of a massacre. This was done by someone who doesn't fight. He preys on his opponents. No matter how many people he saw down, he couldn't quite add up on who must have done this. It definitely wasn't Pildu's style. This meant that there must be another person in the equation, but the background reports didn't really show anyone other than Pildu. All in all, it was another day full of intrigue, as now Nam Bong needs to find the mystery assailant. Just then, Nam Bong finds a man who was actually alive and conscious. The man asks Nam Bong to call up the ambulance for him. Nam Bong reassures him that the medical team were on their way to take care of things. He then asks the guy if there was anyone other than Kong Pildu who was involved in the fight. The man doesn't recall exactly who and how many were there, because it all happened so suddenly. That being said, he does state that he was taken out by a white-haired man. This perplexed Nam Bong, but it also confirmed his doubts that there was a third party involved. So he knows what he needs to do now. Just then, the cleanup team arrives to clean things up. They wondered what to do with the few survivors who were there. Nam Bong states that it won't go down well with the higher-ups if they find out the scale of the defeat here, so he suggests they clean up everyone, including the survivors. This stunned the man, who thought Nam Bong was there to save them, and he begged him to be pardoned from the cleanup, but it was to no avail. Nam Bong then makes his way out of the building while thinking about the white-haired guy and how he needs to be taught a lesson. Once outside, he lights up a cigarette as he acknowledges how Pildu is stronger now that he has a wingman. However, that doesn't change the fact that he would still fall short to the strength of the mighty Manhwa group. The scene then changes to an apartment where Kong Yujin was watching the news about some drug dealer entering the country of South Korea. He then calls up Sang Kai, his father figure from back in Hong Kong. He tells Sang Kai how he is doing all right and that he has been eating the stuff Sang Kai packed for him. There is still half of that left, and there are some nice places to eat around where Yujin is, so there is no need for Sang Kai to be worried. After hanging up, Yujin shifts his attention to Kong Pildu, who was getting dressed while ignoring Yujin. So, Yujin tells him that he should at least thank him for saving him. He questions if Pildu didn't learn how to thank people back in school, and mentions how he expected better from the educated one of the family. Kong Pildu makes it clear that for him, Yujin lost his life some 20 years ago, and he would still like to think of it like that. Pildu also tells Yujin not to mess with his phone in the future. Yujin informs him how he should be grateful for that, because if Yujin had not been tracking Pildu through the phone, he would have probably lost his life. Pildu declares that this quest is of his own and that Yujin should not meddle in it. Yujin clarifies that he has no business in getting involved on the family issues after so long. However, Pildu also needs to know that their mother was the only remaining person in Korea that Yujin considered dear. So, Pildu can't just act like he is the only one suffering from this. Yujin is just as eager to find out and finish off the guy who took their mother's life as Pildu is. Pildu understands that Yujin was being serious. Afterwards, as news about politics goes on, Yujin brings out the special encrypted phone that Pildu retrieved from his scuffle with Park. The phone's internals got damaged by the water, but Yujin took it upon himself to fix it for Pildu. He also took it a step further and investigated all the calls and messages on the phone, and they were all very suspicious. In other words, Yujin thinks it is safe to say that the phone is related to their mother's passing. Pildu once again tells Yujin to stay away from this. Just then, the news shows Kong Il-do, their father, who won the presidential candidate election by a landslide. His popularity as the founder of the Manhwa group has overweighed his many controversies and make him a viable player in the presidential election coming soon. Pildu shuts down the TV, and Yujin once again tells him that this isn't something he can do alone, so Yujin wants to help him. Pildu finds this quite funny. After all, Yujin hasn't been around for ages, and now he is suddenly back to help? No one can tell what his true intentions are. He could be like others, trying to capitalize on the passing of their mother to get a hold of the Manhwa crown. This offends Yujin, who once again says that he is here only to get revenge for their mother. In that case, Pildu thinks that it'll be better if he leaves and let Pildu do it. After this, Pildu leaves the room. Yujin understands that Pildu hasn't changed one bit. He is still that same cold man that he used to be. Even though he pretends to not care about anything, it was Pildu who helped Yujin escape that place. However, his cold demeanor and willingness to carry all the burden by himself is what made him distant from others. However, Kang Yujin doesn't want to make Pildu carry all the burden by himself, so he chases after Pildu and meets him at the elevator. He tells Pildu that there is no point in calling the person he was calling, because Pildu was trying to call using the encrypted phone. He tells Pildu that the place he needs to be at right now is elsewhere. Kang Pildu was confused by this, but the phone also didn't connect to the other side, so he understood that Yujin was up to something. He asks Yujin if he knows something big, to which Yujin states that he knows exactly where their mother's share of the company ended up at. This makes Pildu doubt Yujin even more because he never once made a mention of the shares, yet he brought it up and has information about it. But Yujin thinks that part is not important, they should instead focus on getting their hands on the culprit. Pissed off, Pildu grabs Yujin's shirt and pushes him against the elevator's wall. He tells Yujin to get straight about the matter and tell him what his intentions are. Pildu doesn't believe Yujin has any reason to just come there and help him for no reason. He must surely be looking to take advantage of the situation and take over the company. Yujin once again denies the matter and mentions that he only recently got wind of the news. He started hacking through the Manhwa group servers from back in Hong Kong, and that is where he got a lead on where the mother's shares are. Pildu doesn't understand how Yujin got that from hacking the servers when Pildu, a prosecutor, went through all the possible files and still got no lead on anything. Yet, Yujin got a lead and still managed to do nothing. Yujin slaps Pildu's hands off. He then questions Pildu's capabilities, asking why he wasn't able to put any of the Manhwa criminals behind bars even though he is a prosecutor with files on him. Simply isn't as easy. Yujin then informs Pildu about a very secret information. After Kang Taegu took over, Yujin managed to find out that there is a secondary secret server that Manhwa Group is running. This shocks Pildu, because he had no idea about this. Yujin mentions that very few people do. It is only natural for them to run this server though, as a company as big as them can't just let their files be out in the open. Yujin adds that the server is obviously password protected, but also sits behind a biometric lock. He doubts even board members have access to it. The one with full access to it is obviously their father, Chairman Kang Il-do, and after him comes the presidents of the subgroups. And as they already know, to acquire such a high position, one must be blood related to the chairman. In that way, Kang Pildu actually has a great chance to get inside the lock. He thinks there might be something that the mother must have hidden that Kang Pildu might be able to access. Kang Pildu thinks this is ridiculous. He has no connections to the company. Even if his mother were to leave any information behind, their other brothers might actually have figured out a way to get it. Someone like Kang Cha-wook, who is in desperate need of the shares, must have already hunted it down. Kang Yujin explains that there are separate folders for each son in the server, folders that can only be accessed by the person it is intended for. Yujin insinuates that there must definitely be a folder there for Pildu too, and it could possibly contain valuable input from their mother. As they reach the ground floor, Yujin suggests that Pildu, someone with their father's blood running through his veins, take his chance and see what it is about. However, Kang Pildu makes it clear that while he gets the plan Yujin has come up with, he isn't seeking to get a stronger hold at the company. He is looking to get vengeance.